Tipp Today, in association with Slattery's of Pecan, your main Peugeot dealer for over 50 years in the Premier County. Slattery'sGarage.ie.
Now, good morning and welcome into Tipp Today this Thursday morning. It's the 16th of April and it's Donald Doyle here sitting in for Fran today. A lot on this morning's show for you, a nice jam-packed one. We will have Ireland South MEP Michael McNamara calling for free transport across the country. He'll be joining us in just a few moments. We're going to have Councillor Davy Dunne reacting to Michael Lowry's commentary on Sinn Fein during the Dáil debate on the confidence motion earlier this week. Michael Lowry himself will be joining us in the final hour of the show as well. The Clonmel Bids Ballot is underway now. The ballots should have been starting to arrive into businesses in the town, so we'll be discussing that. We have John G. O'Dwyer looking back on protests of the past here in Ireland. We'll have Muriel Cuddy on the wellbeing slot. We'll have Karen Prendergast having a look at interior design. We'll have all that and much more. But first this week, Larry O'Keefe's Furniture is giving away a €250 voucher to celebrate their huge sale with big savings across all departments. If you'd like to enter, you can just text Larry O'Keefe's to 083 311 3311. A finalist will be chosen daily and the winner will be drawn tomorrow. So don't miss your chance to grab huge deductions across all departments: living room, bedroom, dining and more. There's unbeatable offers and savings galore. It's the perfect time to transform your home. Quickly this morning, we're going to have a quick look at the papers because, as you heard in news, we have a local TD dominating all the front pages along with two of his colleagues, Tipperary North, Fianna Fáil TD Ryan O'Mara, along with James O'Connor from Cork East and Galway East's Albert Dolan with their bombshell statement yesterday evening, starting with the front page of the Irish Times, which has a few pictures of students at the races, and it also talks about high gas prices will outlast years, according to the EU Energy Commissioner. He's warning that even if things change in the Gulf with the Iran war, that the supply issues will continue for the long term. But the main story, of course, is and I'm starting with the Times because the best description of it is from Miriam Lord, who says it's the baby sharks that are circling the Fianna Fáil tank. With Ryan O'Mara and his colleagues, the bombshell statement they put out, basically they're complaining that they seem to be representing the government and defending the government to their constituents rather than representing their constituents in the Dáil, and that they're not going to take it anymore. So that's one of the main stories on the front of the Irish Times today, the front of the paper, the front of the Examiner, also going with Fianna Fáil strife amid push for urgent meeting. As we heard, those three young Fianna Fáil TDs meeting with the Taoiseach last night. They've been backed by some senior figures in the party, but there's a lot of surprise that Ryan O'Mara in particular is involved in this. He wouldn't have been seen as a troublemaker, I guess, in the party, but it's certainly deepening the crisis in the party in Fianna Fáil, which of course has its Ardèche coming up in a few weeks, and there is talk about backbenchers seeing who might be interested in a push against Micheál Martin. The Irish Independent, the main banner headline is Fianna Fáil TDs seeking leader for a heave against Micheál Martin. Again, that Mary Regan and others reporting in the paper that they're looking for candidates to replace him. Obviously, Jim O'Callaghan has been damaged by the protest thing. He would have been seen as the front runner initially. officially. In fact, he joked in Templemore at the Garda College not so long ago that when talk of a heave came up, he kind of pushed Ryan O'Mara into the limelight as a joke, and now it looks like Ryan is playing a big role. So the front of the Indo with that headline, they're also talking about Turkey being rocked by a second deadly school shooting, and they also mentioned the historical rape claim against Munster's new attack coach. Former All Black Roger Randall has been appointed, but there are some allegations that were dropped 30 years ago, I think, in South Africa of a rape charge against him. It was since dropped, and Munster say they're happy about it, but I know that some senior figures have left in protest over that. In the Daily Mail today, it is Fianna Fáil Young Guns warning shot. Again, talking about the young TDs and describing their statement as a blistering letter attacking Fianna Fáil to test the waters on an appetite to replace Micheál Martin as leader. Highlighting the fact that I suppose one of the main points they made in their statement was that the social contract has been strained to breaking point. So local TDs dominating the headlines today. We will have more on that with, as I say, with Davy, Dunne and Michael Lowry later. But first of all this morning, I'm joined now by Ireland South MEP Michael McNamara. Good morning, Michael. Can you hear me okay?
Good morning, Donald. Yep, thank you very much.
Yeah, so look, the fuel crisis hasn't gone away, you know. You've come out and I suppose you tell me what your call is, first of all.
Well, essentially, the fuel crisis hasn't gone away, and unfortunately, I think it's going to get worse. I mean, obviously, in response to the protests last week, the government introduced a €500 million package. That was on top of a previous package, but fuel supplies are going to tighten further across the world because of what's happening in the Middle East. So I think fuel needs to be conserved for those who need it most, for those for whom there's no alternative, for work purposes like those who deliver essential goods, agricultural contractors, etc. And I think a way to do that is to make public transport free, to get people out of their cars and into public transport where there is an alternative. There will be many for whom there is no alternative. I appreciate it's a package that will affect urban areas in Ireland South a lot more than rural areas, in particular the cities of Cork, Limerick and Waterford. But I mean, where we can get people into public transport, we need to do so because fuel is going to have to be conserved going forward, unfortunately.
Yeah, look, this is something that has been raised a bit, that with the climate crisis ongoing, that one thing we could have done with all this money we're getting in from corporation tax and Apple windfalls and the like, that public transport should be made free just to cut down on our emissions in the first place. But Michael, you know as well as I do that I can't take public transport to work. We do have a town bus, which is a huge success in Clonmel, but the rest of Tipperary, there's no real useful public transport to speak of. Now, obviously, people on the bus passes and the travel pass can take trains and buses. It may help people getting into towns for their bit of shopping, but in terms of people going to work and getting around their daily business, this isn't going to help Tipperary.
Nor is it going to help Cllr. It's going to predominantly be something for the cities to help them. But I mean, fuel is something that's coming into the country as a whole. So I mean, if we're getting people onto public transport in our cities, if we're getting people to drive to the railway station rather than and get a train rather than drive all the way to Dublin or drive all the way to Limerick, where there are train possibilities, where there are bus possibilities, then we need to encourage people to use it. It's not a magic bullet. It's not unfortunately going to solve all our problems, but it is a step. It is a part of the solution that I think needs to be considered by the government in conjunction with other measures, because it is important that they reduce the cost of fuel to the greatest extent possible. But with regard to the supply of fuel, the government is going to be, no matter what they do, it's going to be limited. So it's going to be a loaves and fishes operation, and we need to make sure, as I say, that fuel is available for essential deliveries, for agricultural contractors, to make sure that we're able to get through next winter, and there's food for animals in the country, so that we can so that so there will be agricultural produce next winter, as well as this year. I mean, okay, we're through this winter, and there are fertilizer supplies in the country largely for this spring, but it's next spring because it's a long term. The consequences, unfortunately, of where we're at are long term, and there is very little the government can do to increase supply of fuel. So what I think we need to do is encourage those for whom there is an alternative to use that alternative. But of course, I understand that in most parts of Tipperary, in most parts of Cllr, it's not a measure that's going to have a practical effect. But in cities, it is going to have an effect, and we need to do what we can do.
Yeah, I suppose you're saying this would cost up to €275 million. Michael, that sounds like a lot of money, but in the context of some of the surpluses we're still seeing for the government, it's not a big amount.
Well, no, but it's an amount that I wouldn't have suggested spending up to now. But these are not ordinary times. I mean, it is a lot of money. I mean, there's no two ways about it. And I think part of the problem in the country, and part of what's annoying people, is watching money being squandered and overspent on practically every government project. There is local authority projects as well going grossly over budget. Nobody ever being accountable. But it's less than we will spend on, for example, in a 6-month period, it's less than we would spend on the EU presidency. And while the EU presidency is very important, it's important that we do it properly. We don't have to spend €293 million on it. Other countries do it for a fraction of that. In 2013, when Ireland was in very difficult financial times, we did it for less than €60 million. So to go from €60 million to €293 million, somebody needs to. It's all well and good to say that we're going to put our best foot forward and all of that. We put our best foot forward in 2013 as well, and we did it for a lot less money. So I mean, I'm not rubbishing the amount of money. I'm not saying it's not a huge amount of money. It is, but I think it's money that will be well spent if we can make sure that fuel is conserved for those who have no alternative. And many people in Tipperary have no alternative, so we need to make sure that fuel will be available for them to get to work, that fuel will be available for them to work, whether they're agricultural contractors, whether they're commercial drivers, etc. Because what we really can't afford as an economy is to run out of fuel so that people can't, so that essential goods can't be delivered, so that agricultural produce can't be safeguarded. That would be disastrous for the future of our economy, and it's something we need to do everything possible to safeguard against. And unfortunately, the international climate is not good.
Yeah, and look, Ireland still very heavily dependent on fossil fuels, all of which are, in the main part, are imported. That was highlighted in the Dáil yesterday by a number of TDs, and we need to protect against the next energy shock, because these things come around. There's no point putting your head in the sand and saying there won't be any in the future. And I mentioned a story at the front of the Times there, Michael, just a few minutes ago, that the EU's Energy Commissioner has warned that even if this thing is wrapped up to some sort of successful conclusion by America soon, that the high gas prices in particular are going to last years because of the damage that's been done over there already, and we use an awful amount of gas, don't we?
Well, we do. We use an awful amount of oil too, but I mean, and it's just something that we need to look at diversification in the long term. But we need to deal with the crisis that's in front of us right now as well. I mean, I've just stepped out of a meeting, a committee meeting with the Energy Commissioner, and when we're finished, I'm going to go back into that. But I mean, there are no short-term alternatives to the amount of gas that we use. I mean, the last government, which had a large green contingent in it, increased the amount of the proportion of electricity in Ireland that's generated by gas. I mean, they bought a number of gas generators because we were running short of electricity. So it's all well and good to say, oh, well, we're going to move to electric cars and that's going to solve our problem. But I mean, that electricity is in turn being generated by gas. I mean, Money Point is moving away from oil, but it's moving, it's moving from coal to oil. It's a hydrocarbon. So it's all well and good to say we'll electrify. But even where you electrify, how is that electricity being generated? I mean, there aren't very easy answers in this. Sustainability is great to talk about, but I don't think that you can fuel a first world economy on windmills alone, even if you cover the whole country with windmills. And of course, there are issues about where they're sited to, and they're if you take away the subsidies, how actually economical they are. Particularly if you're talking about.
Well, yes, people bring the subsidies up all the time, but actually, I remember doing an interview with an expert in the field who said that actually the fossil fuels are also subsidised. So it's a bit of a red herring that we should really be pushing the green agenda. But I've been doing interviews with people for 20 years talking about the revolution we're going to have, how it's going to be so good for our economy, and we're going to become a leader in renewable energy and all the potential for tidal and solar and wind energy off our coasts and on land here. But there seems to be no appetite, but certainly no urgency in getting all of that stuff moving.
I think there is an urgency across the world in getting it moving, but the reality is the cost of floating offshore. It's a technology that's being developed at the moment, and the cost is prohibitive right now. Whether that's, there was one of the biggest projects in the world was off the east coast of America, Ørsted, which is a Danish company which had many ambitious projects or proposals off the west coast of Ireland,
and has some inland in Ireland as well, and around Tipperary.
And there's some, but compared to the amount of energy required and the amount of energy that was supposed to be generated, offshore was to be our moonshot. I remember hearing Leo Varadkar describe it as. But Ørsted is in considerable financial difficulty right now. Floating offshore is not commercially viable at the moment, is what I'm hearing from experts who are looking to develop this, who have a vested interest in advancing it and moving it forward, who are not looking to detract from it, but it is not commercially viable as we speak.
Okay,
but that doesn't mean that it won't become viable. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't look at it as a possibility. But I think to rely on it to fuel our economy next winter, this summer, would be live horse and you'll get grass. We just can't do that. We do have to make sure that we do everything possible to make sure that there's enough fuel in the country to keep our economy going.
And then back to your proposal to make public transport free. Obviously, it's doable. I was on a trip to Luxembourg not so long ago, and all public transport, I know it's a very small country, but all public transport is free. A couple of years ago, well, it's more than a couple now, but they decided to put in a tram service in the main city in Luxembourg City, and they had it done and dusted within 3 years.
Yeah, how long are we talking about the dark
Metro
underground?
North, yeah.
The cost to overrun speed.
Yeah.
The cost of the public service spending, the lack of accountability for it, I think, is one of the. Obviously, people are to the pin of their collar, but the pin of their collar, they're probably earning more than they've ever earned before. But at the end of the week, once the bills are paid, have less money than they've ever had before. And then they turn around and they see public service money, or the public service spending money like there's no tomorrow, like there's absolutely no accountability for it. And that's annoying people. It is something that there is going to have to be accountability for how money is spent. I've followed keenly what's happening with the young Fianna Fáil TDs. I heard you say Ryan O'Mara would be seen as a troublemaker. I think, in fairness to Albert Dolan, he doesn't come across as that either. He's been a very constructive voice in the Dáil. But what they're saying is that they are being asked to communicate by government, which is essentially the permanent government, which is the civil service, why it can't do things, rather than telling the civil service what to do. And if the public don't like what happens, well, they can change their TDs, they can change their government. But at the moment, we have a public service, we have a permanent government that is running the country, and sometimes it just looks like they're running it for their own benefit rather than for the benefit of the whole country. And they're not actually. There's no mechanism by which they can be held to account, because they're instead of being told what to do by politicians, and if people don't like what the politicians are telling them to do, if they don't like how the politicians are getting things done, they can get rid of them. We have a system where all responsibility for water services or rail services or anything, they've all been hived off into bodies that are actually not accountable to the public. and politicians can then shrug their shoulders. It seems that this is a generation of young politicians who want to change that. I applaud them. I think they're right. I think it needs to change. I think there has to be accountability for how the country is run.
Do you think, Michael, will it result in a change in leadership in Fianna Fáil? I think the statement mentioned senior members of the party, didn't mention the leadership specifically, but that's the implication.
Yeah, but look, I mean, that's an internal matter for Fianna Fáil. I mean, I think their commentary is on how the country is run more broadly. And, I think part of the problem in Ireland right now is people don't see an alternative to that. They see that whoever they vote for, whoever they put in, it's going to be the same, essentially the civil service running the country. It doesn't really matter who the politicians are, that there's this permanent government in place that is not accountable. And that is the problem. So it's not about one party. It's about a system that needs to be changed, and very quickly, before people lose hope and lose trust in the state that we've spent so much money celebrating 100 years of very recently.
Yeah. Look, an interesting proposal anyway, especially in light of the current crisis. I think people, even in Tipperary, would, while it mightn't be useful on a daily basis for most people in the county, I think they would appreciate the opportunity if public transport was made free. Listen, Michael, thank you very much for joining us on Tipp Today this morning.
Thank you very much. Thanks.
Okay, folks, we will be back very shortly.
Tipp FM's Tipp Today.
With Slattery's Garage, Puck On. Main Peugeot dealers in the Premier County. And now stocking the full range of the luxury French car brand DS Automobiles. Book your test drive today with Slattery's Garage, Puck On. See slatterysgarage.ie. Tipp Today, in association with Slattery's of Puckon, your main Peugeot dealer for over 50 years in the Premier County. slatterysgarage.ie.
Now, welcome back to Tipp Today with me, Donal, sitting in for Fran today. Look, we're going to go back to this political stuff. I'm being joined now by local Carrick-on-Suir Sinn Féin councillor Davy Dunne. Davy, good morning to you.
Morning, Dolan, and good morning to your listeners.
Thank you very much. And Davy, look, there's a lot going on over the past week, and now this week we're seeing the fallout. The government is under pressure, and apart from government supporting local TDs lashing out at Sinn Féin, we're now seeing backbenchers lashing out at the senior leadership in the party. I suppose just give us an overall view from your point of view of what's going on at the moment.
Thanks very much, Don. Just before I start, I just want to wish Deputy Michael McNamara all the best. I know he was in hospital and he was due to go to Dublin to vote no confidence in the government. So I just want to wish him and his family, I know they're going through a bit of a tough time health-wise, so I want to wish them all the best and speedy recovery.
Yeah, and we'll join in that, of course, Davy, yeah.
Thank you. It's an all-action week, I suppose, Don. As a news person, you're delighted with this because it's a fast-moving event politically, and but this is born out of anger from the people. It was an organic protest, and I picked up on it straight away. I couldn't get to the first 2 days of the protest because I was working nights, so I'm a fellow worker as the men on the roads were and the women that were on the roads. They are the ordinary, decent backbone of this country. And I think what happened with Michael in his speech was he lashed out in the classic deflection tactics. He lashed out at my party to deflect away from the anger that he was feeling from the people on the ground. And I know there's a protest on Saturday in Thurles where he'll be under more pressure. It's starting at the Munster Hotel car park at 2:30. So he'll be under more pressure there. I'm reading the comments on your own page on Tipp FM, and I know Michael disabled his comments, so he's coming under a lot of pressure, and he's lashed out. Look, it's not personal against me. I don't take it personally. I always found Michael to be very friendly with me. Anytime I ever met Michael, even when I wasn't a councillor, he always addressed me by my name and everything like that. So I have good respect for Michael, and I have good respect for the colleagues. His party colleagues, because to me, I class him as a party. 5 councillors representing the Lowry group. I always got on well with all those councillors. I wouldn't always agree with their politics, but this was a classic case of deflection. Blame somebody else when you were under pressure. And Michael knows all about running businesses, and he knows these are the people. He went to Cashel, he met the protesters. He knows the pressure they were on, and I think he should have done the right thing. He should have done what the Minister Healy-Rae did, the other Michael that he helped put into power. He should have done the decent thing, standing with the people that stood with Michael for a long time and got him elected. And when Michael wasn't always popular all over Ireland, he was still getting a massive mandate from the people of Tipperary. So I think he left down the people of Tipperary. That's my opinion.
Well, look, I'm sure, and I'm not here to defend him in any way, but I assume his position is that he is now in a position of power and he can do stuff for the people of Tipperary. He has goals to achieve, and he did say when he went in or came out, I suppose, of those government negotiations, that he was in it for the long haul, that he wasn't going to be balking and voting against the government at the first crisis. I suppose, is his position not understandable?
No, because he helped set up the government, and without Michael's help and the Regional Independent Group, there would be no government. So if the deal that they negotiated, and I take Michael on his word that he was at the negotiation table putting this package together, as was former Minister Michael Healy-Rae. If it wasn't good enough for Michael Healy-Rae, who has the hand on the pulse of rural Ireland and contractors and farmers and all that, if it wasn't good enough for Michael Healy-Rae, the deal shouldn't have been good enough for Michael Lowry, and certainly from the people that I spoke to on the protests. And we went to the protests and we listened to what the people had to say, and they asked us for a vote of no confidence. That's what was one of the asks that we were given, and we were in direct contact with Mark Harty, Pierce Doherty, Muriel. We were sending, as were other councillors from all over Ireland who represent Sinn Féin, we're sending a message back up to the party headquarters and the leadership. And the protesters asked us clearly, can you put a vote of no confidence down? And we did exactly what the protesters wanted. And we got a great result, in my opinion, because the government is weaker and there are 2 TDs less supporting them, and they're down a minister. So that's a great achievement. And people tell you that votes of no confidence are a waste of time, but this certainly wasn't a waste of time, and it's piling on the pressure onto Micheál Martin now, as from our own Ryan O'Mara, which I think was a bit cynical. I know Ryan, I served with Ryan as well as a councillor, and I hope he's doing it out of what the statement says, and I hope he's true to his words, that he doesn't like the direction that the party is going. But I think it was a bit cynical to vote confidence in the same man and then the next day come out saying you're not happy with the same man. So I find that a bit cynical, and I think people will find that cynical as well. So Ryan can answer for himself, and I know you have Michael on later, so Michael will be well able to answer for himself. But from what I can gather, speaking to the protesters, speaking to people, like I work night shifts, I work days, I work long shifts, I listen to workers, I'm a union representative for over 20 years, and I've never seen the anger that's out there in relation to the cost of living. People are to their pin or collar. There's new cost of living crisis coming in now because they're putting up the bus prices for kids to get to school. They're bringing back in the charge for the leaving cert and the union cert. These are all more expenses being piled on top of people that are at to the pin of their collar.
Now, in fairness to Deputy Lowry, he didn't hide from the protesters. I know he did visit the M8 in Cashel during the week last week. Now, that meeting didn't go the way he'd wanted, and they were not for turning, let's just say, to put it lightly. But when he did get up to speak in the Dáil, he gave a line that Sinn Féin was the most hollow, cynical and destructive political imposters he'd ever seen in the state, or that the state had ever witnessed, Davy. And he said you had no solutions no solutions. I can't remember the other word he used. He's seeing that you're capitalising on people's anger.
Yeah, but that's not true, because we're in government in the north. I know it's not a perfect arrangement, but we were the ones that were the architects, one of the parties that were the architects of the Good Friday Agreement. So we're far from what Michael claims we are, because there'd be no peace process without Sinn Féin. There would have been, and we're going to have a united Ireland through the work that Sinn Féin are doing on the ground. We represent people. I represent people every day of the week. I have a mandate the same as Michael has. I stand before the people. I'm a third time an elected councillor. I stood twice before that. I'm involved in politics all my life. I represent people to the best of my ability. We're never going to agree on everything, but on issues like this, where it's pouring down rain and we have a rainy day fund there to help people, it's your job, I believe, as a public representative, to help your fellow workers and your fellow citizens to get over these crises. Like, it wasn't David Dunne or Michael Lowry that caused this crisis. It was Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu and the illegal war on Iran that spiked oil prices. So if I had a slight criticism of the protesters, I thought they should have brought their protest to Doonbeg to Trump's resort. I thought they should have brought the protest to the embassies of Russia, and who are no saints in all this, in their what they caused in Ukraine. And the same, they should have went to the US Embassy in Dublin as well to protest there. They should have also went to Shannon, where we have warplanes landing and returning from bombing missions in Iran. If this war didn't start, we wouldn't be in this crisis that we are now. So,
yeah, I'm not sure the details about Shannon being used, Davy, but that's a really good point that was being lost, wasn't it, Davy, that this is not the doing of failed government policies or anything. It's out of their control to a large extent. Do you think the government has to step in every time there's a cost of living issue and bail everybody out? Is that your position?
No, when we had COVID, they stepped in. That's their job. When the war in Ukraine stepped in, they brought in energy credits, right? You can argue the finalities about whether it should be universal, because they were able to give a 9% VAT rate for the hotels and McDonald's and all those big businesses. They were able to give energy. They were able to give reduction on fuel for Ryanair, massive profit organisation. But the ordinary man, the small man that's out there, the sole trader that's suffering, they didn't do enough for them. Like, one thing that struck me about the protest, when we walked into the protest, there was a young lad pulled up in a fairly bet up wagon, and he pulled up. They came in alongside of us, and he pulled up, and I got to talk to him, and I said, "What's your story?" And he said, "I'm the three sides in his own side of his van." And he said, I myself and another chap work together. We do three sons of work, he said. And he said, I can't. I can't get out this week. It's going to cost me too much that I'm better off standing here on the road. You know, that's two people. That's the type of people that were now on that protest. Ordinary, hard-working people that get up every day, stay up late at night. They, work on behalf of themselves and for the people. If we don't put crops in the ground, we don't have food, and we'll have inflation on food prices as well. So I stood with those people, because I know what it's like to be the person that has to pay a mortgage, to be tight at the end of the month when you're paying your mortgage and your money is not there. You know what I mean? And you have to pay that mortgage before you even put food on the table, because you can't miss your mortgage payments. So I know what the stress that these men were under and these women. So that's why I stood with them, and I think that's why the general public got behind this protest. I've never seen the general public get behind the protest. Any post I put up in support of the fuel protest was getting unanimous support from ordinary working people that wouldn't know anything about tractors or haulage business or bus companies.
Yeah, look, and I was out at the protests in Cllr and Cashel, and I was around the town of Cashel trying to assess whether people were upset about the extra traffic and the trouble it might be causing. But almost everyone I spoke to was at least sympathetic, if not supporting the protesters. And I spoke to loads who had similar cases to yourself, the one you mentioned just there, of people just who found it impossible to continue making any money when they had to travel and pay for fuel. But do you have any concerns over the links to anti-immigration protesters? Because there were a lot, the likes of Christopher Duffy and others, who got a lot of these protesters out in the first place.
I would have concern that some of these people that were the leaders were trying to conflate two issues. But from my talks with the people on the protest and some of the leaders on the protest...
Sorry, Davy, your line has gotten a little worse there. I don't know if that's a bit better there again.
Now, try now. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, that's definitely better.
From talking to the leadership of the protest in Cashel, and one thing I asked them was please don't make this all about the haulage and the bus companies and the big boys. Make it about everybody. Make it about the cost of living. And they told me 100% sure that it was about the cost of living. They said unless the people, the housewife, the person bringing children to school, the carers going to meet their clients and help people in the community, unless it was about them, that they were going, the protest wouldn't work. So that's what they gave me a commitment on, and I thought that was brilliant out of the protesters. That it wasn't about them; it was about everybody, and we were all in this together. And I think it was unfortunate some people there thought they could use it for other means, and that wasn't right. When you're there, you concentrate on the issue, because if you get diverted away or you start putting divisions between people,
there was a lot of people who mentioned here live on air on Tipp Today and to me in interviews that started out talking about the fuel prices and that crisis, but went on to talk about immigration matters and calling for civil war or revolution. Is that worrying?
Look, some of the rhetoric I saw and some of the actors like Tommy Robinson, Tommy Ten Names, was trying to interfere in what was going on in Ireland. And I know the people that were on that protest didn't want anything to do with Tommy Robinson. They didn't want anything to do with anything else. It was a fuel process, cost of living protest. That's what it was about. And it shouldn't have been there to divide workers. Whatever colour your skin is, whatever religion you are, if you're working, you're standing with us. And what we needed to do was unite all the workers to stand together. I will have a criticism of, as I said, I'm a shop steward for over 20 years. The unions got off the pitch. The unions should have came out and supported their workers. And I know people are saying, but the representative organisations they weren't representing the workers because that's why they went out. If the Road Haulage Association, the farmers' organisations were representing the people, this strike wouldn't have happened. So there's a gap between the membership of these organisations and the leadership. And I'm afraid to say there's a big gap between union members, grassroots union members, and the union leadership. Can anybody text in who's the leaders of the unions in Ireland now? Back in the day, Jack O'Connor, David Begg were on all the political shows every day. Every night I put on, they were there representing workers, arguing against ministers for better conditions for workers, better pay for workers. The unions, I would have a criticism of the unions for standing off the pitch. They should have got on and they should have worked together with the people on the ground to make things better for everybody. And that's your job, and that's my job as a politician, is to represent people. And I was asked to do a job, and I did it to the best of my ability. Okay,
look, we're going to have to wrap this up, Davy. Thanks a million for coming on, but I do want to go back to one thing you mentioned earlier. You said you thought this statement by Ryan O'Mara and his two colleagues was cynical, I should say. Do you think it's part of a wider move, maybe them jockeying to, if they're part of the start, the pebble that starts the avalanche to get rid of me, that they might be jockeying for position in the next regime?
Well, that's what you do. That's what you do in the political parties, and Fianna Fáil have done that for years. You align yourself to one person, hoping that you'll get a better job out of it. But again, we don't need a change of leader in Fianna Fáil. We need a change of government. And I think the people are crying out for a general election. And we would ask people to give us a chance, along with others, if we don't get the numbers, to go in and form a left government, and for the first time in the history of the state, and see can we do any better. And if we don't do any better, the people will give us the answer in the ballot box, and they'll put us out. And that's the way it should be. We shouldn't have Tweedledum and Tweedledee for the last 100 years. One in, one out, and now the two of them together. You know what I mean? It's like Lanigan's ball. It needs to change, and that's what I'm hearing on the ground. People want a general election, but they want people to stand on principle. They want people to stand with the workers That's what they want, really, is people to stand up. They're not looking for every problem to the government to solve every problem. It's going to be impossible to solve every problem. There is ways of doing it, and we have different ways of doing it, and we'll be putting that to the people, and we'll be asking people to support them to give us the mandate to win the form of new government. So it's not a change of leader in Fianna Fáil or change of leader in Fine Gael we want. It's a general election we want.
Okay, look, we'll leave it there on that thought for people to think about. Davy, thanks very much for joining us this evening. We'll be back, folks, to talk about the Clonmel bid situation.
Tipp FM's Tipp Today.
With Slattery's Garage, Puck On. Main Peugeot dealers in the Premier County. And now stocking the full range of the luxury French car brand DS Automobiles. Book your test drive today with Slattery's Garage, Puck On. See slatterysgarage.ie. Tipp Today, in association with Slattery's of Puckon, your main Peugeot dealer for over 50 years in the Premier County. slatterysgarage.ie.
Now, this is Tipp Today on Tipp FM, and I'm Donald sitting in for Fran today. We are going to talk about the Clonmel Bid Company and the plebiscite that is ongoing at the moment. If you were tuned in to Tipp FM News earlier this week, you'll have heard on Tuesday that the ballot papers were ready to be sent out and were being posted to every ratepayer, every business in the town of Clonmel. Now, I'm joined on the phone by Councillor John Fitzgerald, who is himself, of course, a ratepayer in the town. Good morning, John. Have you gotten your ballot paper yet?
Morning. I have indeed, and I've already voted yes to the bid proposal, Donald, and I hope we'll get a good result in this process in Clonmel.
Okay, so we had a few lines on this on Tuesday morning, John. You explained for us, if you wouldn't mind going over it again, and you have seen the ballot paper now and you've done it, so explain to us what people will see on this ballot paper and what they have to do.
Well, business owners will have received a ballot, basically a simple A4 sheet of paper, which sets out what the options are, that you vote yes or no to the establishment of a new bid process in Clonmel, which is essentially a newly formed company that will take control of many of the things that the town needs right now and needs going forward. To make it a better place, to bring a new energy to it, and to give more dedicated, action to events and festivals and other community engagement that the local authority wouldn't be in a position to do. And it's not replacing anything that isn't there already, really, quite honestly, because the local authority do a completely different job. This is a completely new concept based on what we've seen in other towns, like Sligo particularly. Sligo is a similar sized town to Clonmel. They've adapted this. It's working very well there. And the proponents of this in Clonmel have looked at that model and they're satisfied that we can replicate it in Clonmel.
And John, the budget for this year, Tipperary County Council's budget for this year, almost didn't pass last November. The meeting had to be stopped and reconvened a week later, and that was over a proposal to raise the commercial rates. I suppose, how have the proponents of the bid idea convinced the town, or have they convinced the town at this stage, that paying an extra 5% of your commercial rates on top of that, on top of the amount you pay to the council to create this new company, have they convinced them, have they convinced them that this is a good idea?
I think they're doing a good job convincing them. I don't know that really we can't let this opportunity pass us, really. I know what you're saying about the rates comes up every single year, and there's always a debate regarding the rates for business owners, and it's a legitimate debate because business owners have to watch their base costs every year, and you have to look at that when you're running a business of any size. This is something. It's using the rates as basically the template on which it'll gather this new fund, but it's a separate thing completely. It's basically where a new company, a new board, proponents that have been working lights out. I've seen them. They're people from all walks of life in Clonmel, from professions down to retail shops, pubs, beverages people, industrial people, small businesses and large businesses, where they have kind of said, right, well, let's do this. Give it a 5-year review point where you can take stock of the whole thing once again. Also try and attract larger amounts of money that they can get, that the local authority can't even apply for. This company can apply to get facilities for extra funding with the local authority, and it would be up to €3 million over the 5-year period. So I don't think business is looking a gift horse in the mouth here. It's making a decision, as everyone in business has to do every single day of their life. They have to make decisions about their business to keep them on track and keep them building. And I hope they'll decide to go with it. I think they will. And the process is on right now. And I'm talking to business owners that sometimes they don't think we have a choice, but we have to do this.
Yeah, I suppose the main argument against it, John, is that what's the bid company going to do that the council isn't going to do, and whether the local authority is in fact doing its job if we need this bids company. But you've touched on that there, and it's been highlighted to me as a journalist when I've asked the question that there's because it's a separate legal entity, a company, it can apply for government grants that the council isn't entitled to, and there's a whole pool of money out there that it's going to go looking for. Is that your take on it?
That's my understanding, and it's my belief that is the case. And the local authority, something like this requires the people in the local authorities in the different sections in the local authority, be the environment or roads or the borough district area or whatever. They move around in their jobs from time to time in the town, in Tipperary County Council, in both in Nina and Clonmel, and in the town hall in Clonmel. Their jobs change routinely, but the bids company's job will never change from the job that they're set out to do. They're setting out to do something very specific, and something that kind of takes away from the council. Yes, work that the council probably shouldn't be doing in the first place. The council, the local borough district office in Clonmel will be dealing with huge amounts of applications to do with URDF funding for public realm infrastructure and things like that over the next period. But to have somebody that is out there trying to give the town a new energy and give the town plenty of events in time and seasonally, and make Clonmel a better place to do business and to go out in the evenings, and environmentally and every other way, it'll improve footfall in the towns and the town's vibrancy. That is my looking into it. And I've gone to meet. I've listened on this one as a local representative, but as a ratepayer, I don't think I have a choice. I'm a fellow who sells houses. So when you're selling houses which is family homes, you're also trying to sell people the idea that they'll be living in a nice environment where there's lots going on and where they can raise families with plenty of activities going on, and that they're being well run.
Yeah. What do locals have to do then? Is it stick a stamp on it and send it back in once they've filled out their ballot paper, or can they hand it into the council offices, or what's the best thing to do?
Well, the best thing they could do is if they do it kind of, don't let it become part of the pile on your desk or in your counter or whatever, or under your counter. If you got it like I did yesterday, and mark an X in the yes spot, and bring that to the county council, or post it. There's a prepaid envelope which comes with it, which you can stick in the letterbox. Or some of the proponents will call to your business and collect it and bring it back to you if needs be.
Okay. And of course, they do have the option to vote no as well, John. So we'll leave that there.
Yeah.
Listen, very quickly before we go,
Yeah,
John, can I ask you what you make? Your party is escaping a little more lightly than Fianna Fáil at the moment. Is this government and the current Fianna Fáil leadership going to survive this fuel crisis?
I think so. I think that we're back. The government of Ireland has to deal with complexities, issues on an ongoing basis, and I have no doubt at all that they're dealing with them. there was mistakes made, I think, in relation to the reaction to the fuel crisis. There's no doubt about it. But I don't think a government that never makes a mistake or an error is necessarily a great government either. I think that they realised it and they've shook themselves down and they're back doing other things and doing other policy issues and dealing with day-to-day stuff for Ireland right now. As regards Fianna Fáil, I wouldn't comment high up or low down on the internal politics of the Fianna Fáil.
That's a very political answer, John. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. We better come back shortly with news. Thanks, John.
Tipp FM's Tipp Today.
With Slattery's Garage, Puck On. Main Peugeot dealers in the Premier County. And now stocking the full range of the luxury French car brand DS Automobiles. Book your test drive today with Slattery's Garage, Puck On. See slatterysgarage.ie. Tipp Today, in association with Slattery's of Puckon, your main Peugeot dealer for over 50 years in the Premier County. slatterysgarage.ie.
Welcome back to Tipp Today with me, Donal, sitting in for Fran this morning. Leanne is by the phones to take your calls on 1-800-938-007, which is our free phone number. But you can also text and WhatsApp on 083 311 3311. Now, as you've heard there, we're still dealing with the fallout from the fuel protests and the blockades. But it's not the first time that the Irish public have taken to the streets in mass protests to voice their frustrations to the powers that be. John G. O'Dwyer is with us here in studio in Nina at the moment, just now. John, good morning.
Good morning indeed, Donal.
And you've compiled a list of memorable demonstrations over the past while for us. I immediately thought of Big Jim Larkin, but you're going back much further than that.
Yeah, it was just wasting time. I was Big Jim Larkin, of course, and of course what you need very often when you have a very strong, successful protest is a very charismatic leader, and Larkin was certainly that. But if we go back to Daniel O'Connell, I think the interesting thing is, you say the Irish have a history of protest. In fact, we almost invented it. It almost came from Ireland. And if you go back, we'll say up to the beginning of the 19th century, what would happen is that if you wanted to overthrow the government, you got out your guns, you went out, you took them on, and you'd see, and there was a shootout, and that was it. So we'll say that would have happened in 1798, up to that. So tens of thousands of people coming together at any stage in Ireland before 1800 or almost anywhere in the world, it was about they were going to fight. There's no doubt about that, right? And then a guy called Daniel O'Connell came along, and he evolved a new way of doing things, where you hold the moral high ground because you have peaceful protest. And governments who are expecting, to have shooting protesters and wading into them, how do you do that with peaceful protesters? And O'Connell understood that. Now, he says he was a pacifist. He was actually a pacifist who killed a man in a duel early on in his life. So whether it was pragmatic or what it was, it certainly worked. And the British government didn't know what to do about it. So what he did was, he had these mass meetings, absolutely huge, and he also, what you need then is some kind of a demand that can resonate with people. And at the time, the wind was kind of behind him. The Whigs in England believed in it as well, Catholic emancipation. So, he had meetings about it. It was very hard. So what he did was then, in the end, he stood for Parliament himself and then went to Parliament, refused to take the oath, putting huge moral pressure on the British. Then when he had Catholics were emancipated, there was the Tide War, again the same thing, huge amounts of meetings, and I say the first one was a victory. This was half a victory. It kind of got rid of the tithes. They were reduced and the landlords had to pay them, but they could still pass it on to the Catholics. But then he went for a more difficult one, and this is where his meetings were now getting to be huge. You're talking about what nobody was really counting, but they were huge. Some say 1 million people. Maybe there wasn't quite 1 million people there. And then
coined the term Monster Rally.
Monster Rally, yeah. Well, the population of Ireland at the time would have been about 8 million, so it is possible. And, how do you deal with this? So then the British government decided that what they would do is at Clontarf, they would ban the meeting and they would shoot into the crowd if people came along. And O'Connell backed down at that stage. And then that was a problem because the more radical supporters then he had to split with the Young Irelanders at that stage. But again, the field would have been his. You depends so much. If the British had fired and killed 100 people, you just imagine the outrage there would have been. So, but he backed off of that. So that was it. And then we went on further in the land wars, and we invented something new again that came to the land war: the word boycott.
Boycott, yes.
Captain Boycott. And again, how do you deal with this? We'll say if you go in and you try to burn a landlord's house, well, fair enough, the law can deal with you. But if you won't talk to him, if you won't serve him in the local shop, that's not an offence. It's a very powerful tool. And again, what you want is for a demonstration or for a protest, you want a clear message, what you're looking for. And in the land war, fair rent, fixing of tenure and free sale for them. And it worked. They got through it. Again, the governments never know how to respond. They arrest, at one stage O'Connell was arrested, Davy was arrested, bring him in. What do you do with him then? And in the end, you end up talking to them. So those are the lessons from it. When you have a charismatic leader and a cause that resonates and you stay away from violent means, it's very difficult for a government to deal with it, as the present government was showing in the present protests.
Yeah, Gandhi was inspired by the protests here, wasn't he? He took a lot from what the Irish experience, I guess, with the British Empire.
Absolutely. I mean, it was O'Connell developed the template, and of course Martin Luther King as well. He would have had followed on O'Connell as well as that. So I definitely think it's one of the things.
And of course, O'Connell had links to the anti-slavery movement, so that's where that connection there went.
Yeah, well, I mean, he was, in fairness to O'Connell, he was passionate. I say he was a completely abolitionist. He wanted the abolition of slavery, 100%. And at that stage, it's easy for us to say it now. Of course, they're all against slavery. There would have been a lot of people who made big money out of slavery at the time. So it wasn't necessarily a popular position. So he was very powerful in that. And that led on then to, of course, and the funny thing in Ireland was, and
slavery, sorry, it's just occurred to me that slavery was kind of a fuel to the economy at the time, wasn't it? It's comparable to present day in that a lot of the labour was done, so it was like the diesel of the time.
Yeah, it was costless labour. So you didn't see it, but some of the great houses of Ireland, were built on the back of slavery. But you didn't see it. It wasn't obvious. It was money they made from trading with the Americas. That's exactly what happened there. So yes, slavery was a big part of the economy, and you have to go out. Every protest has to go out a bit on a limb. You have to bring something new, and then the question is, do you get the wind behind you? Do you get public support? And then you mentioned then the lockouts. Jim Larkin then was very powerful because they had that, and what they wanted was union recognition. But in the end, what happened was, I think, they were being supported by the English unions, and as it went on, it was withdrawn. And the interesting thing then is when you have the new state in Ireland, if you go into the 20s, 30s, 40s, whatever reason, maybe it's a very conservative Catholic state, very consensual, protest is almost unknown. There's very, very little protest in that period. And then suddenly, I think it's probably because now big numbers of people getting more education, going to universities, and suddenly the 1960s peaceful protest explodes.
Yeah, and it wasn't quite what we saw in the United States, which were a bit ahead of us. But yeah, Ireland did change hugely on the back of third level education, you say, in the 60s.
Yeah, and television, all that kind of thing, the educational things that came from that. So we began to, but the interesting thing is the first people who went for mass protest in Ireland were actually the farmers again. And that was in 1966, and they terrified the government. They marched from Bantry on the capital, and the march is getting bigger and bigger, people are joining it. And I think, they didn't say it explicitly, but I think what they were afraid of was that, in fact, Mussolini had marched on Rome in 1922 and the government just fled. That was about it. And they felt the farmers might be trying to do the same thing. No, they weren't. These people were Catholic by and large. They were conservative. They didn't want to change the system hugely. But they came up then, and then they sat outside the Department of Agriculture. I'm like, you can't exactly wade into them with batons, and now the press are around. So the government are in a dilemma. And then now, that's the interesting thing though. Then they went, when you move into direct action, it's always a little bit more dangerous because you're inconveniencing somebody. And the farmers then, this isn't the first time, they blocked the motorways, they blocked the bridges. Farmers blocked the bridges with combine harvesters. And in fact, the farmers, if you South Tipperary, the bridge at Fein, at Cllr, and what's the other one that's Cllr and Golden.
Right.
They were all blocked by farmers. So there was direct action there again. And in the end, then, Charlie Haughey wouldn't deal with him. Neil Blaney would deal with him. And they got recognition. What they wanted was recognition as the same recognition that the government would deal with him in the way they deal with any trade union.
Yeah, so that's going back 60 years now, and that precedent has been there. And it's not the last time the farmers exercise their muscle like that.
They do hugely. They do. And I suppose the fact that they have access to big machinery and that they can do it more effectively. But of course, you think protesting on, and the classic example then of where you get it wrong is the People's Democracy marches in the North. They were looking for what most people would agree with: one man, one vote, no discrimination against Catholics. And they marched on a peace march from Belfast to Derry, and loyalist protesters just waded into them. The police stood back. In fact, a lot of the people who attacked them were actually the B specialists. They were the reserve police force. The police stood back. But of course, if you see this thing, that's shooting yourself in the foot straight away. If they had let him go through, that was the thing to do. But of course, people didn't understand it as well. And of course, then you won huge sympathy, I think, for the Republican cause or the nationalist cause in Northern Ireland. And that remained in America, where it was very powerful.
Very powerful indeed. And of course, the history of protest, the exercise of power, large numbers. You're saying it's almost peculiarly Irish to do it and to exercise that power. It was huge in the North in terms of the civil rights there, and getting recognition for almost an apartheid system, it's been called at times. Oh, yeah,
well, I say it wasn't almost, it was certainly an apartheid system. Whereas, for example, in Derry, you would have a loyalist, maybe a couple would get a house, and there would be a Catholic family with 3 generations and 20 in it, and they wouldn't get a house. There was no doubt about that. So that is the main thing about protest. You must hold the moral high ground. As much as you can, you must avoid being seen to become violent, and that was, I think, later on. Then the Hitchbrook protests will say. The problem was they didn't win as much public sympathy because when they marched on the British Embassy, there was a huge violence, and you see, police baton charges, you see stones being thrown to police, all that kind of thing. And that's not the sort of thing that's going to resonate well. But the point about it is that everybody, if you go back to O'Connell right up to the guys who are out on the motorways, it's a feeling of being ignored, marginalised. That's what motivates every protest. It's the Catholics being looked down on in O'Connell's time, the tenant farmers being looked down on by the Protestant overclass, the workers in Larkin's time being thought of as nothing. That's it. And then farmers again being looked on. While Ireland was industrialised, it was a good job. They hadn't gone into the EU, and they had very poor income because of the British cheap food policy we were selling in there. So they felt ignored. And all protesters will nearly say then, once they get out on the street, psychologically, there's a sense of belonging. There's a sense suddenly of not being ignored anymore, and it's exhilarating. They feel a sense of belonging, and that's the thing. And nearly everybody that actually being involved in a protest improves their sense of well-being hugely.
So it's actually good for you mentally to protest, even if you don't achieve your aims?
Well, yeah, that can be a disappointment then, and there can be a letdown when you come back to the whole thing. But the point about it is, I think, with all protests then, you need pretty clear aims when you go out there. Now, an unlikely one then, I think, that one great support here was the water charges protest. And
that's been mentioned a few times as sort of a direct precursor to this one.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I think the thing is that the people with the water charges, it was clearly a left-wing protest, and they were probably very experienced activists, so they knew how to do it. and how far to push it. Now, they nearly shot themselves in the foot as well. You remember with Joan Burton, when she was locked in her
kidnapping, we'll say in inverted commas.
Yeah, and she was saying a grandmother, kidnapping a grandmother. This kind of headlines, you don't want those. They're like a hole in the head because you're losing the moral high ground. And always the problem, and the present protest, the same thing, is that once you start a protest, you just don't know who's going to turn up. You had people will say on the present protest, the extreme right.
You've kind of set out the rules there, John G., in terms of how protests have worked in the past. How has the past week and a half or so complied with those rules, in your view?
I suppose, I'm not going to make, but I would just say it worked out. What I would say is if you are doing this again, and I believe there are, you'd want to be absolutely clear going out. Who are the leaders? You have everybody. It's O'Connell, it's Michael Davitt, it's Jim Larkin. And even then, I think the farmers will say protests in 1966 and 67. There was very strong leaders there. T.J. Maher was the man, a very charismatic man from my own parish. And then you had Rick Ardisi, and you had a firebrand then, Joe Ray, who was from the Tipperary again. But Joe Ray again, you had that kind of a thing. And then you had very good organisers in terms of in a way, the water protest shouldn't have worked. Because what are you protesting against? Everybody else in Europe is paying water charges. But I think, too, sometimes it can be a breaking point. It's the straw that broke the camel's back. It's not in itself. We'd come through a recession.
That's what it was. It was the recession building up to the water charges being put on top of people, and people saying, look at the weather, we're the wettest country. It just didn't make sense to people.
And I would guess that's probably what's happening. And I would again see being ignored. I would say the people that came out on the protest, I would think they were people who've been ignored. And maybe somebody will ring in and tell me no. But I would guess that in the back of their mind there's some kind of an idea. There's a cosy cartel up in Dublin. There's the public service. There's all the non-governmental organisations. They're all on the left. They all have kind of cosy cartel. They get everything they want because they're inside the system and we're left outside. And generally when a group resorts to protests like this and direct action, it's generally a weaker group that will do that because the strong groups are able to negotiate with the government within the system. So you can see that the Hurrahs and the Farms are inside with government last week, whereas the other people who they don't feel well served by these people are outside on the street. It's the weaker groups go onto the streets because the strong groups generally have a direct line to government.
Yeah, and that's something we saw recently. So there's a lot of parallels. You've been pointing out that the one of the keys is having key leadership, recognisable leadership, somebody who's brought people with them and who can bring them down the hill again. That's part of it, isn't it?
Absolutely. And a person that you need an experienced operator, somebody who understands how to answer questions and that, because obviously the media are going to try. So you had Philip Guigan, I just saw him on Virgin TV there one night, and he said to you, when the interviewer was putting questions to him, had a question, actually, you're trying to catch me out now. You see, of course he's trying to catch him out. That's exactly that's your job as well.
Yes, exactly.
If you had Ryan O'Mara on, you'd be looking for inconsistencies in what he's saying. Maybe you won't find them, but that's what you'd look for. Yeah. So that showed a kind of a lack of experience. So you'd need to get experience and then maybe have more clearly taught. We say if they're going out again now, there has been a $500 million package. How much more are you looking for? What exactly are you looking for? And it must be something then that will resonate with ordinary people, so that they'll put up with the inconvenience that goes with it. But if you go too far with these kind of things, with what you call direct action, which is where your peaceful protest in direct action, where you inconvenience people, people have a low tolerance in the end, in the long run. They put it in the short run. Direct action in the long run probably doesn't work. And the problem would be too with governments we'll say we're the fishermen out to come along and say, well, yeah, we're kind of left out. What about our diesel? And we lost all our courses.
We've already had the trade unions coming out saying that basically they're marching soon.
Yeah, they're marching soon. You see, that's the problem. And what the fishermen to go on and block all the oil, we'll say the oil terminals, the ports bringing in the oil. how do you respond to that? So you can also have to see it from a government's point of view as well. They have to keep the system going and whatever. But, there was certainly a lot, and I think the government was surprised by how much support there was for this kind of direct action, even though most people are being convenienced a bit.
Yeah, and was that a feature of those previous protests as well? Like the people who didn't go out to the monster rallies, were they were also sympathetic to the cause?
I think the thing is that the ones who didn't go out were probably the Protestant landowners. So what you're talking about here is you had a very homogenous group. You might have had 8 million people in Ireland. 7 million of them were Catholics. That's basically it. And they wanted Catholic emancipation. They wanted, you're looking for home rule then. They were looking for that. And they wanted an end to the hated tithe. So they already had something in common. There was a huge group. And then Michael Davitt was able to talk the tenant farmers. There would have been, nearly 1 million of them across the country. You had an easy, homogenous group. The problem is now society is broken up into much smaller interest groups, and trying to bring them all together is quite difficult.
The farmers in the 60s, for example, rural Ireland would have been largely behind them.
Yeah, they would all have been conservative and Catholic, and the smaller farmers would have tended to vote Fianna Fáil, and the larger farmers Fine Gael, but there would have been very, very little differences in policy between them when you have a homogenous group like that. But you can see how even if you take the left away from protest, how fractured the left is. So it's very hard in Ireland to have a consistent voice of the left because it is fractured into so many groups.
Okay, so the key things in a successful protest: strong leadership,
yes,
clear goals,
and something that resonates with people. In other words, people who feel in some way ignored or marginalised. They're very fertile ground. So I'd say the water protests, it was a lot of people who really felt marginalised and had really been hurt during the recession, and all they needed was somebody to come out, and you needed some kind of a cause to come out. It could be water charges, it could have been something else.
Yeah, and of course that was hugely successful then, as you say, for the leaders, the likes of the Paul Murphys, Richard Boyd Barretts, who would have had lots of experience on smaller protests, but have become really, I suppose, powerful figures in their own right on the left, while not widening their electoral support much, but they really benefited from their I suppose their position in that.
Well, leaving out Joan Burton, they managed it very well because they did get involved in direct action in stopping people putting in, water inspectors coming around and people who are administering the system. They did do that, but they never got filmed assaulting anybody or anything. They were very careful. And that's the whole thing then, is controlling your followers. So in other words, a good example of that is the loyalists in the north wanted to march, and there was this huge protest every year building up on the Garvacchia Road, massive. Hundreds of thousands. You said they won't be able to control this, and then somebody throws a petrol bomb into a house and kills 3 Catholic kids. Bang! You've lost all the moral high ground. It was over in a week.
Yeah. And are there other examples? I mean, we've talked about the big ones here in Ireland, and we talked earlier about sort of the Irish influence in India and in America. Are there other big protests that failed or succeeded that come to mind internationally?
Yeah, well, I mean, the other big one, of course, that succeeded, if you go to internationally, is to the United States. And, I mean, essentially, the war wasn't really lost in Vietnam. It was lost on the campuses in America. And managing your response to these from a government is very, very difficult. So, for example, Kent State University in 1969, 4 students were actually shot dead during a protest. And this is in a liberal democracy. Now, what you're talking about is, if we go back, if it's not a liberal democracy, well, then Iran, you shoot thousands of them. It doesn't matter. You just throw, that's it. But a liberal democracy, it's very, very hard. And governments then trying to protect themselves, and they're always, you're dancing on the head of a pin with this kind of thing. And, I understand the papers have now shown it, that the government's still going to protect itself in Ireland, even though they complained about shoot-to-kill policies in the north. When there was the march on the British Embassy, there were snipers on the roof. And if they were told, shoot to kill. If we have to shoot anybody who climbs into the embassy, we cannot have a second embassy burned in this country. So, governments will respond, and even the most liberal governments, you don't want to push it in a protest to a stage where the gloves come off completely. And, and even liberal democratic governments...
Because it gets out of hand very quickly when you lose control.
Will protect themselves. And I was a young student in college. I was very funny. During the H-Block protests, I was up and I was living in the centre of town. And I was studying for exams. It was in May. But then for a bit of a break, I always go down. And every night in Dublin, there was a riot. Every night. And what was the interesting thing? I don't know if you remember it. The British Home Stores on O'Connell Street. There was, I think it's where Easton's are now. British Home Stores were there, BHS.
I know Easton's all right.
Yeah, and they kept attacking that every night, and there was hundreds of guards, and they were on. And the big danger then, don't let them cross the river in case they get near the door. It was great fun for me to watch it, but the problem was, I think, again, that these protests were always on the edge of violence, and the middle classes will reject it. And then when there was, huge riot outside the British Embassy down in Leafy, South Dublin, and that, I think a lot of public opinion then swung against them.
Yeah, so when it goes wrong, you start killing protesters and calling them terrorists, which unfortunately we've seen a bit of in the United States recently.
Yes, and that's it. And you can see, the idea that without consequences, that protesters would actually be shot, it's a fine balance, and any protest, I think you don't want to overthrow the system completely because you don't know the hell what's going to come after it.
Yeah, devil you know. Look, John, that's a very enlightening chat, especially in light of what we've seen over the past few days. I've covered a few protests myself in my time, and I think we might be covering a few more soon.
I think there'll be a few
more.
Listen,
John, thanks very much. We'll be back very shortly, folks. Thank you.
Tipp FM's Tipp Today.
With Slattery's Garage, Puck On. Main Peugeot dealers in the Premier County. And now stocking the full range of the luxury French car brand DS Automobiles. Book your test drive today with Slattery's Garage, Puck On. See slatterysgarage.ie. Tipp Today, in association with Slattery's of Puckon, your main Peugeot dealer for over 50 years in the Premier County. slatterysgarage.ie.
Now, welcome back to Tipp Today. Again, Donal in for Fran, and as you're well aware at this stage, we have been talking about it extensively because it's the only story in town at the moment. But the government did survive its motion of no confidence earlier this week, 92 votes to 78. That's despite the loss of the two Healy Rays. Michael, the junior forestry minister, who told the Dáil he was quitting his portfolio to join his brother in voting against the coalition and in support of the protesters, even though Michael was involved along with Michael Lowry in brokering the deals that were announced on Sunday night. Regular on the show, Alison De Vere Hunt is joining us now on the phone. Alison, you were watching the motion of no confidence, I believe. You weren't surprised by the outcome, though.
I wasn't surprised. It's like, I suppose, the three lads coming out yesterday with their statements, all wishy-washy. I suppose what really did stand out for me was Micheál Martin's first comment on X after the vote of no confidence. It was carry on regardless. It was basically, he was just off the phone from Mark Carney, the Canadian Prime Minister, and they were it was push on in relation to pushing the next next part of CETA, that trade agreement. And I suppose, in relation to that trade agreement, that will allow Canadian investors to sue the Irish state through a special investor court system if government policies like environmental or health regulations, if they affect their profits. So it's carry on as normal and basically try and, do more damage. It's not like the old style trade agreements of, we'll trade this with you and you trade this with us. It's coming down to, if we can't provide you with, say a normal trade agreement, we will be liable to be sued by you. Once fully ratified, the provisions can override domestic court decisions, and that could last, for 20 years, even if the treaty was to cease. So the thing is, from what I can see, is nothing has been learned. Like, Micheál Martin has to go. That's it at this stage. I don't see protests coming to an end. I just see them actually getting more people getting in behind them, because there's nobody listening in Fianna Fáil, and that is the problem.
You were out on
And
the
Fine
protest
Gael,
yourself, Alison, were you?
I visited the protest. I wasn't there for long. I visited the protest here in Cashel. And, I thought it was a very well-run protest. And I suppose, Donal, I was heavily involved in the beef protests in 2019. And this protest really struck a chord with me, because we were in meetings. The four men that tried to get into meetings last week and went to Ag House and then were, not told they weren't allowed to come in. I was actually allowed in, and we negotiated. And to be honest, I can understand why the groups like this that are protesting do not want representatives like the road hauliers or the IFA, etc., going in on their behalf. Because from what I could see when I was part of these talks, a lot of these people are bought and paid for. Look at what's going on with Borbia. That seems to be kind of going into the ether. Like, we were there for it was longer than 36 hours. We weren't allowed leave, but some of the...
Well, Alison, I'm sure you're not saying that people are taking bribes, but we had Ger Hyland from the IRHA.
I'm not saying that at all.
Well, I was accused of being bought and paid for by protesters last week because I work for a radio station. I can tell you that I am not, and if I was bought and paid for, I wouldn't be driving the car I'm driving. So we can't throw out allegations like that. No. People are going in good faith to negotiate. And Ger Hyland told us yesterday here on the station that if people don't feel well represented, hauliers don't feel well represented by the group, then they should join the group and get more active and have their voice heard.
Yeah, but that's not how it works. I've been part of groups. I actually was in there, so I can actually speak from, from the place of where these men wanted to be. We negotiated, and we didn't get what we wanted. And say other groups gave in. I'm not saying that there was any bribes. I'm just saying that, the people that are really feeling this pain aren't the people that are representing these bodies. It's the people on the ground. And I know they say about, we need to have a cohort of people that are going in that are, there's a system here and there's a way it's set out. But unfortunately, they'd come out with the answers that people aren't happy to get, that will not keep them in business, Donal. So that's why, say they should have actually been allowed in. And I think that, say the government only really put petrol on the fire by delaying this. And now we're in a situation where really, say, none of the measures have fixed anything. It seems like, Nora doesn't even come into it because, why were all these charges brought in straight away when our requirements are that we have 90 days worth of strategic oil reserves, there. So things aren't adding up, to be quite honest, Donal.
Okay, and the movements, all the talk this morning in the papers, Alison, was about Fianna Fáil and the potential start of a heave, although there's clearly nothing really happening yet. Do you see much happening over the next little while? In terms of Fianna Fáil, I mean, in Micheál Martin's leadership?
I think if the protests continue, then yes, I do see something happening. If they don't, it'll probably just kind of, disappear like usual. I think, though, a lot of these TDs, they stood at protests last week and they went in then and voted with the government. I think there's going to be a lot of unrest in local areas in regard to, say, TDs and ministers of different areas. So I definitely think if there isn't any real change, then I think people are going to, Micheál Martin's head is on the block, I think.
Okay, so they're certainly eyeing him up. Alison, thanks very much for joining us this morning. That's great. We're going to get a little bit lighter just for a little while in a moment, and we're going to talk interiors with Karen Prendergast, but we'll be right back.
Tipp FM's Tipp Today.
With Slattery's Garage, Puckon, main Peugeot dealers in the Premier County. And now stocking the full range of the luxury French car brand DS Automobiles. Book your test drive today with Slattery's Garage, Puckon. See slatterysgarage.ie. Tipp Today, in association with Slattery's of Puckon, your main Peugeot dealer for over 50 years in the Premier County. slatterysgarage.ie.
And welcome back to Tipp Today with me, Donald Doyle, sitting in for Fran Curry today. You'll have heard earlier on in this programme local Sinn Fein councillor from Carrick-on-Shore, Davy Dunne, on. He was a little angry with the performance of our local independent TD, Michael Lowry, in the Dáil earlier this week during the debate on the no confidence, or I should say the confidence motion in the government. I'm delighted to say that Deputy Lowry is joining us now on the show. Thank you very much, Michael, for coming on.
Good morning, Donald.
And Michael, look, we were going to talk about the ongoing fallout from the fuel protests and that confidence motion, but I have to ask first, given the statement by Ryan O'Mara and his two Fianna Fáil colleagues last night, is the government in trouble at the moment?
Well, look, the government have managed and handled this crisis very badly. First of all, can I say that I went to Cashel. I met the protesters. I listened. I heard. I got their message. And immediately I acted. And I did some very blunt and hard talking with the Taoiseach, the Taoiseach and various ministers. What I met in Cashel, I didn't have to stay there for any longer than 30 minutes to realise the extent of the problem, because they told me. And I met hard-working
Michael, you went
people.
out to ask them, could they stand down for the sake of the country,
No,
what they told me.
No, I didn't.
Is that not the case?
But you see, let me explain.
Sure,
First of all, I met hard-working people. Many of them were tired, they were weary, and then if you add to that the financial worry, the stress and the strain, a combination of that is a cocktail of misery that vents anger, and that's what happened. When I went to the protesters, first of all, they told me the issues. I didn't ask them to stand down. What I asked them to do was, they told me what their strategy was. I asked them not to blockade fines and not to blockade the ports. I said that I think it would be a retrograde step and it wouldn't help their case. I have no problem with people protesting. They're entitled to protest. As I said, I met them, I listened to them, and the messages that I got from them, I brought back and we worked on them. As independents, we worked very hard to influence the introduction of specific financial support for key sectors, such as haulage, distribution, logistics, school transport, bus operators, farmers, agricultural contractors. And more importantly, I insisted on two things. One, that there be a reduction in the tax take to reduce prices at the pumps for everyone. Secondly, what they told me was that unless these organisations, unless they were affiliated to the big organisations who were sitting at the table, they couldn't access funds. They weren't registered with them or affiliated with them. So I insisted, and my group insisted, that sole traders across all these sectors could have the same access to the support funds as those that were affiliated to parent bodies. And those two measures were included in this package. So, look, I fully understand. I have encountered the anger, the resentment and the outright hostility. I've heard it. We've got it in emails. I've got it from my supporters. I've got it from others. But people are genuinely concerned. They're genuinely worried. Their backs are to the wall. And when you see your business in jeopardy, when you see your livelihood or your family is in jeopardy, of course you're going to react. So I have no difficulty whatsoever with the protest.
Okay. Any difficulty with some of the leadership of the protest and some of the ties to anti-immigration activists?
Yeah, well, look, the protest started out with many, what you had was aggrieved, hard-working, decent, respectable people. And they were worried sick about the future. But there's no point in saying anything else. It was later infiltrated by undesirables and a very bad element. And their only agenda was to cripple the country and bring down the government. So Sinn Féin put down a motion, no confidence, which is right. There's no problem. I have no problem with that. It's a democracy, and they're entitled to put down the motion, no confidence. I didn't vote for the motion of no confidence because that was going to collapse the government. What good was collapsing a government going to do? It wasn't going to solve anything. It would bring further instability, and I can't imagine the extent of the damage to our country if we had no government in place for 4 to 6 months. We'd be in limbo at a time of unprecedented world crisis. What we need at this stage is we have global instability, and we need responsibility, we need unity, we need a collective effort. We don't need division, disruption and political opportunism. To bring down a government at a time like this would have far-reaching consequences for our people. The first thing that would happen, Donald, is legislation, the package that we were talking about, the 500 million, that would have not been implemented. Legislation would stall. So when a government falls, the Taoiseach is obliged under the Constitution to go directly to Áras an Uachtaráin, dissolve the Dáil. So there's no Dáil in place. So the vital supports will be delayed, and the certainty that families and workers and business desperately need will be thrown into doubt. And while we'd eat each other during a campaign and take 6 months to form a government, the state would crumble. So that's the reason I didn't vote. If I thought it would solve the problem, of course I would vote, but there was no point. Change a government after 6 months of a vacuum wouldn't serve any purpose.
And it is something that the protesters were calling for, certainly by the end of the week, Michael. Is that a bit of naivety on their part? And I suppose you're standing by your claim that in Sinn Féin's part it was opportunism, just trying to generate a bit of point scoring without actually hoping they'd be experienced enough, I presume you'd think, not to want to actually bring down the government at a time of crisis.
Yes, because, look, Sinn Féin's approach has been, people forget, I'm going to remind people now that when we had a general election, which is only, 18 months or something, because we formed the government?
Less, yeah.
Sinn Féin's first tactic was disruption. From the very beginning, from day one of this Dáil, from the day this coalition was formed, they fought to undermine and sabotage it for the sake of political advantage. They tried to block the appointment of a government. And every other day that I go into that Dáil, and I'm there a long time and I've heard a lot, I've never seen such negativity. They're against everything, they're for nothing. They have no policies. They're completely, they have no ability to govern because they have no ideas and they have no credibility. And that's my summation of it. I'm entitled to have my summation of the opposition the same as they are entitled to have their summation of me.
Yeah, so, Councillor Davy Dunne told us this morning that they have a proven track record of governing in the north in a very difficult situation, as he put it, up there, far from ideal, but they're getting on with the job. And he would say, and most of their TDs will have said, that they have plenty of solutions that they are offering to the various problems in our society if the government would listen.
I haven't heard anything constructive from them. Every day we listen. Effectively, what I would say, I'd sum it up by saying, first of all, their politics is slash and burn. And while governments here, every party will work and do their best for the Irish people, Sinn Féin at the moment is using the hardship of the people as a political weapon. And they seized on this moment because there's nothing else to offer. It's only contrived outrage. Try agitate. But at the end of the day, and what I dislike, and now that you're talking about it, can I make it very clear to your listeners? I understand and accept criticism. I've got that criticism from my own supporters, from my own members. So I have no problem with criticism. People are entitled to express their views. People are entitled to have their views. People are entitled to protest. I respect genuine people. But, Donald, I want to say this. I will not accept abuse, which is organised, coordinated, which is vicious and nasty and vile. And I certainly will not tolerate my female staff in my office subjected to insults, to slurs, and to open intimidation. And many of these online agitators, which are orchestrated by Sinn Fein and the far right, they've crossed a line of decency. They're using fictitious names, they're using fake addresses, they're faceless cowards. You should see what I have read and what I have been sent to me. Scurrilous, outrageous messages and graphics. It's absolutely toxic out there at the moment. Nothing is off limits. Nobody is safe. And you saw the Garda Commissioner coming out yesterday saying that his members have been targeted. Their badges have been photographed. And people have posted online to threaten the Gardaí, their families, in their homes, and to go after them and chase them out of their homes. That doesn't happen. That shouldn't happen in a democratic society. Those are our guardians. The Gardaí protect all of us. So a threat to the Gardaí, it's a revered institution of the state, and they're there for all our protection. This is, completely off limits.
Yeah, now, I don't think anybody condones the kind of things that we see online as well. And I know your government colleague, Michael Murphy, said he appealed to people to stop abusing his staff in his office as well. So that has been a feature of this. We have seen a little bit of this nastiness, as much as some of the genuine protesters were trying to keep it as a peaceful protest, as they said, and a decent one in a lot of cases, and we're trying to prevent certain elements joining protests, but there has been a lot of nastiness in places.
I've never witnessed anything like it, and look, I fully understand that people are hurting. I know that people are in real trouble and they're under extreme financial pressure. My job, as I've always seen, is be constructive. I gave the last 10 days trying to work with colleagues in government to find a solution to these problems. We produced a package last Sunday which was worth 525 million. That's on top of this 250 million that was already put in place. And the important thing that these support measures, they're backdated to when the war in Iran started, which is in March, and they'll continue until the 31st of July. And that 775 million package works out at 40 million per week in government support since March up to July. So it's 40 million a week. And that's broke down, Donald, is the fuel tax cuts is 482 million. The social welfare, the 70 million is extra for the fuel allowance support scheme. The transport scheme is 120 million. Agriculture is 100 million. So, that means that there has been a cut in excise on petrol by over a third, 36%, since this started, with the combination of the two reductions. There has been a cut in excise on diesel by almost half, 47%. And there has been a cut in excise duty on green diesel by a third. Now, green diesel is a problem because I'm listening to people, agricultural contractors, builders, machinery people with hired equipment, they're using green diesel. The government has been hamstrung because they can't do a rebate scheme. So this week, the Taoiseach and the Taoiseach and the party leaders wrote to the European Commission. They've been in constant contact with the European Commission, and the European Commission are, at the moment, examining relaxation of fiscal controls. People don't realise that the government is actually controlled to a certain extent by directives from Europe. So this week, all European Union governments are consulting and meeting to organise a temporary derogation from the Energy Taxation Directive. What that would do, Donald, is it would give flexibility to national governments to reduce tax take and not be penalised for calling it state aid.
Yeah.
So
and when are we likely to hear if they've been successful in that move, Michael?
It's ongoing. You see, what we're faced at the moment, it's the bottom line is the country faces the most serious crisis in recent history because we have had oil supplies disrupted in the Middle East, We have energy markets in turmoil. The world economy is in tatters. And much of this, whether people like it or not, is outside of our control. The war in Iran is crippling the world economy. And the only hope we have is that Europe comes in and supports us, because this isn't going to stop here. When you see Trump's tactics, when you see what he's doing, when you see the hardship and the misery he's causing all around the world, it doesn't appear.
And then describing
as if
his Secretary of State as a small bit of pain.
Yeah, and criticising the Pope. I mean, where is this guy going to stop? When is he going to be hauled in? Like, how can the American people allow this to continue? But look, that's the way it is. It's a global crisis. We have to manage it as best we can. And there's packages available at the moment. And I would say to everybody involved and who's impacted, the support for farmers, the support for haulage and coach thing. I heard somebody this morning on a radio saying that school transport would stop. There is a targeted support for all coach operators that deliver the local link and deliver school transport services. So what will happen there, Donald, is that they all have contracts to supply those services. Those contracts will be adjusted to allow for the increase in fuel. So they won't have to stop.
Because I did see some coach operators saying that they were going to have to pull out of the school bus service. But you reckon that's not going to happen?
It doesn't happen, because there is a support scheme. It'll be in place in the next 2 weeks, and it'll provide. What will happen is their contracts will be topped up to take account of the additional costs that they're incurring, so that they can keep the buses on the road and make it. See, what's happening, Donald, is many of the people who are affected here, they have machinery, they have trucks, they have lorries, and the biggest component of their overhead, of their cost is fuel. They're working on low margins. So when they get a belt of an increase like this, it knocks you for dead. It knocks you. You see, it ends up with many of them who are subcontractors just cannot afford. As one guy said to me in Cashel, he said, Michael, he said, if I leave my truck at home, if I leave my truck in the protest, I'm not losing money. If I drive my truck, for the rates that I'm allowed to charge, I can't make money.
Yeah,
and I fully understand that. Yeah, so,
tell me,
why wouldn't you be...
Micheál Martin and other senior ministers, Michael, sorry to cut across you, but just occurred to me that, I was hearing the same thing from protesters. You're clearly telling me that you were influenced by the protesters and what they told you, whereas senior ministers and Micheál Martin were saying that, all these deals were going to be done anyway, that there was no influence and they didn't achieve anything. But you're telling me different.
Yeah, I have no doubt they did. Listen, the bottom line is, I didn't go behind the bush in saying this. I told Micheál Martin, I told Simon Harris, and I told ministers directly that you need to act. I kept asking, where's the package? What have you done about the package? So the package arrived, but it arrived after a lot of damage has been done. So, and this package will have to be monitored, because this package isn't going to solve everybody's problems. It will assist. I have no doubt it will assist in a big way. And I think now that there is an understanding of the suffering that's going on out there, that it will be constantly monitored by government. And with the involvement of the European Commission, I hope that our government can continue to support, and even more support when the time comes. And could I also say that we have a budget coming up. The preparations for the budget are already starting. And I feel that as a public representative, that we must start looking after those who do work, the people who work in our society. We must start to acknowledge and to respect and to reward medium and small businesses, publicans, shopkeepers, service providers, caregivers, the enterprise and business community. They invest, they create jobs, they create wealth in our communities. So at the moment, we have businesses that are strangled with overheads. They're burdened with levies and charges. So the next budget must change the direction of spending of public money. We have to there's no such thing, there can be no such thing as free money. far too much money is squandered and wasted in the public service. There needs to be a complete review of the value that we're getting for money and the money that we're spending, and we need to send it in the direction of the people who earn it and deserve it.
Yeah, when we spoke briefly on Sunday, Michael, you told me that in advance of the Cabinet meeting that the industry deals for the different sectors had been signed off on, but that you were still pushing for the excise duty, which was going to help everybody at the pumps. Was the government reluctant to give that to people?
Yes, that's the bottom line. They were. I mean, the thing I knew, because we were involved in the support sector, in support packages for the different sectors. But I made it very clear to the Taoiseach and Taoiseach, and particularly to the Taoiseach on Saturday. I told him straight up that, he's the Minister for Finance. He has a responsibility to deliver. And I said, you can look after all the individual sectors, but there are people who use their cars to go to work, to go to school, to do their various daily lifestyle, to look after, their families. They need fuel. And I said, you'd have to reduce the price at the pumps. And that has happened. And what's very important, and I mentioned this yesterday at our meetings, that it's hugely important that this is monitored, because it needs to be passed on. I'm not so sure that all the reductions that are being announced are being passed on. There's an excuse every other day for why the price it goes up instantly and it's slow to come down. So that needs to be looked at.
Yeah, and I'm just wondering what you make of the travails in Fianna Fáil and for Micheál Martin in the fallout from Ryan O'Mara and his two colleagues' statement yesterday evening, the support they got from the likes of Sean O'Farrell and Willie O'Dea, I believe. How much trouble is the government in? Surviving a confidence motion is one thing, but Micheál Martin is still under fairly severe pressure at the moment.
Well, Micheál Martin's position is a matter for Fianna Fáil party. It's a matter for their TDs, senators, and ultimately, I suppose, the membership of the party. And it's not for me to get involved in their travails. But I would say that, that it's better that all issues in relation to any party's leadership would be resolved, because this ongoing discussion about leadership in any party creates further instability. And this is a time when we need stability and when we need to work together, and where we need to be organised, and where we as public elected representatives need to deliver for the people, match the requirements that they have, assist them and support them in a time of difficulty. So, these are issues that need to be sorted and get on with the job.
And has Ryan O'Mara improved his prospects in the party, or has he damaged his reputation by coming out like this?
Look, I haven't seen what Ryan O'Mara has said. I'm not, I haven't even read it. I'm focused, to be quite honest, on yesterday I gave time in the Department of Agriculture, I've given time in the Department of Transport, and my objective and all my focus and energy at the moment is on getting these packages and getting the money out to the people who need it. I'm not interested in any other sideshows. I just get on with my job. That's what I'm there to do, exert the influence that I have to ensure that people secure financial support sooner rather than later.
Yeah, Michael, before we go, and I do thank you for coming on, but we have had someone from Sinn Fein in touch, texter in, a party member, unhappy that you might have been implicating his party directly in the abuse that your staff have been facing, and saying that unless you can prove that they were Sinn Féin members, you shouldn't be saying that. Just to be clear, we none of us will be condoning any abuse of any staff or politicians in general, Michael. But can we just clarify that it wasn't while you were getting abuse in general from Sinn Féin members, we don't have proof that specific staff members were targeted by Sinn Féin people, do we?
I'm long enough in politics to read the tea leaves. I know where it's coming from. So let Sinn Féin have a look at themselves. I have no time. I'm not going to waste my time tracing what they are, but I have a good sense of what's happening. I know what's happening. I've never seen the ferocity, the viciousness, and the nastiness of what has gone on in the past week, and that's as much as I'm going to say.
Yeah, but there is a lot of anger out there, and we can't attribute it all to Sinn Féin. So maybe we'll just make that clarification.
Of course, listen. I'm not attributing it all to Sinn Féin. I'm not. I understand, as far as I'm concerned, it's a combination of the far right and Sinn Féin. That's my view from the correspondence that I have received.
Okay.
So I would think all political parties, including Sinn Féin, need to go back to their membership and tell them, that there's a way of behaving. There's a certain decorum that should be applied, and that there's no need to stoop to the low levels that we've stooped to. And the point I'm made in the Dáil is that this kind of toxic politics is doing real damage, and it's in particular discouraging young, talented people from stepping forward to serve. We all saw the problem that every political party had in getting candidates to stand for local elections. When I see people putting their name forward, going on a ballot paper, getting the confidence and the trust of the people in their area, and then they're subjected to this level of abuse, that is not democracy. That is not fair, and it has to stop, because there'll be nobody in politics in 10 years' time if this kind of conduct continues.
Yeah, look, we all agree that there should be a level of not even politeness, but a level of decency in any proper debate. Yeah. Michael, thank you very much for joining us today, and I'm sure we'll be talking again soon.
Thank you, Donald. Appreciate the time.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Okay, we'll be back just after this.
Tipp FM's Tipp Today.
With Slattery's Garage, Puck On. Main Peugeot dealers in the Premier County. And now stocking the full range of the luxury French car brand DS Automobiles. Book your test drive today with Slattery's Garage, Puck On. See slatterysgarage.ie. Tipp Today, in association with Slattery's of Puckon, your main Peugeot dealer for over 50 years in the Premier County. slatterysgarage.ie.
Final stretch of today's Tipp Today with me, Donal, in for Fran, and we're going to be going back to politics in just a moment, but a little good news for someone first of all. We have today's finalist in the Larry O'Keefe's competition. Congratulations to John O'Neill from Ardfinnan. He is our man picked out of the hat for today. He will go into the draw for tomorrow's winner, and the winner will be announced tomorrow of that €250 voucher. So again, congratulations, John, on that. Now we going back to the phone lines and to Martin Brown, former Sinn Féin TD. Good morning, Martin. How are you?
Morning, Dunne. Good morning to your listeners.
And Martin, look, you've taken exception with Michael Lowry, probably from his comments earlier in the week in the Dáil, but again this morning, where he's been very unhappy with Sinn Féin members.
Yeah, look, I am taking exception to it, and so are our members, Dunne. Let me be quite honest at the start. None of us are excusing any kind of unacceptable behaviour to any staff. Look, I had an office myself when I was there, and we condemn that kind of behaviour. But to try and link that to Sinn Féin, or even link it to the legitimate protesters that has spent the 6 days on the side of the roads trying to make things better for their families, their businesses, and for everyone, I think it's unexcusable. And if he has any proof that Sinn Féin members were involved, I'm asking him to put that proof out there. And we as party will deal with our members if they're involved in that, and trying to link Sinn Féin as well to the far right. It's just another tactic by Michael and his group of PDs that have kept this government in place. And the problem started from day one, and he gave out about the tactics we were using. Michael Lowry and his group tried to be in opposition and in government at the same time. We as an opposition party and other opposition parties did objected, and that is our job, to object to that kind of thing. You cannot be both. You cannot say both sides of the fence. So Michael needs to either put proof up there if he says he has it, like he seems to claim, or else withdraw that kind of a statement.
There have been campaigns in the past, Martin, not from the party leadership, but of Sinn Féin supporters online piling on, just to use that phrase, and targeting particular people over particular whatever incidents, whatever it might have been. Like that has happened. It does happen, Martin, doesn't it?
But Donald, there's a massive difference in what you're saying there and party members putting their viewpoint or the party viewpoint out there to what Michael Lowry has accused us of the other day in the Dáil and again on the radio this morning of actually insulting and intimidating his staff.
Yeah,
we've all suffered from what Michael is talking about, pylons from Michael Lowry's group from Fianna Fáil, Fein. Like I said, we had it myself for 4.5 years. It's not acceptable when you cross that line from legitimate concerns or putting your viewpoint out there to be insulting, and that, like Michael Lowry is accusing us of. And that is not, I would not accept that from Michael Lowry, them kind of accusations being thrown out there, because it is putting a very
Martin,
bad picture
you can
out
understand.
there.
I thought Michael was getting a little bit emotional when he spoke to me about it. It sounds like there was some fairly horrific abuse sent into his office and directed at his staff. I know as a TD, you faced some of it, you've said, so you must know where he's coming from here.
I do, Donald. But he also says that his Sinn Féin bots and false accounts. I'd like to know how he can make out or throw that accusation out there with these anonymous accounts that they're Sinn Féin bots. Like, I could throw an accusation there against anybody in government and say that they're behind these anonymous bots that attacked us or attacked Mary Lou or attacked Ivana Bacik or anybody. We need to be very careful of what kind of statements that are being put out, because to be quite honest with you, I think it's just a divide and conquer that they're trying to do with the government and Michael Lowry's group. Is trying to split the protesters. These protesters, we stood above with the protesters, and there's data that Sinn Féin put no confidence vote in. Michael can say what he likes. You know, Martin and Simon Harris were telling us that these were being worked on since the first agreement, which we voted against because it didn't go far enough. Michael comes on the other day, and he comes on again today, saying that, it was all because of them. Like, they can't have it both ways. We stood on the road beside farmers, hauliers, ordinary middle, low-income workers, housewives, self-employed, and we listened to their concerns done. It isn't just Michael and them that had the right to go and speak on their behalf. They had people on each of the protests that all they want to do is to be listened to. And you go back to the budget. There was 700 million given to developers.
Before we go back to the rest of the issues, Martin, and I do want to discuss that with you. Can we just both appeal to people not to be abusive, particularly to staff members who are just doing a job, but as well to that representatives deserve a bit of decency in how they're being treated? Can we just put that out there just for now?
No, I'll put it out there straight away. If there is any Sinn Féin members involved in that kind of thing, I'm asking them to cease it straight away. Staff in any office are doing their job. They have their mortgages, they have the petrol going put into their cars and all that. They do not deserve anything like that. And we condemn that kind of behaviour. So I want to make it quite clear on Sinn Féin's behalf, we do not accept that. And the same to politicians. But I suppose we're in the firing line. I was, Michael Lowry and Davy was on earlier. We're probably in the firing line. Give it to politicians if people are angry in that, but do not include their staff for that. So I can't be any clearer than that, and the party can't be any clearer than that.
Yeah, and there's a line that shouldn't be crossed with politicians either. Criticism of policies is fair. Criticism of personalities and other abuse is crossing a line, isn't it?
Yes, but it is a case that Michael and people like himself that comes on and throws out these accusations without any proof for that a certain cohort, he's blaming Sinn Féin. We cannot only put out what I'm after saying. We condemn that kind of behaviour to any staff member. They are doing their job. So if there is any Sinn Féin members at it, I'm asking them to cease straight away. There is no crossover. It is wrong to target any staff like that.
Yeah.
But the frustration is coming from go back to just even the budget, 700 million being given to developers for apartments that are already built. People are looking at the Children's Hospital, the bike shed, the security hut, 20,000 rides during the week there for the head of RTE. It is just building up all the time. And Michael can say what he likes about Sinn Féin and we have in policies. Owen O'Brien has wrote 3 books on housing. Our policies are there for anybody to see. I'm asking Michael, where is his policies on housing? Where's his policy on health? Where's his policy on employment? It is easy to go on and attack us as an opposition party to say we have no policies. They are there for anybody that wants to see, go into the Sinn Féin website. And I urge people, but Michael is a politician, a long-time politician. We have never seen a housing policy out of him. We have never seen a health policy out of him. So if he wants to accuse us of not having policies, put his own out there at the time and let us compare policies. Because we have had some great policies down through the years that have been totally rejected by governments, Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael-led governments. And I go further, Donald, at this stage, because I think part of the problem with our government is that the number of independents. Because if people really study independence above and that all, most of them are Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael that didn't just get elected at conventions and they stood. But when it comes to voting, they revert back to their own Fianna Fáil background or Fine Gael background. And that is part of the problem that we are facing. And that is part of the frustration of people out in the street. And I don't think it's finished yet because Michael Lowry's own man, Sean Kenny, so did Simon Harris and Micheál Martin, condemning the protesters at the start. They threatened them with the army. They said it was stunts. Like, they were reckless, they were illegitimate. All that kind of thing flared up and just drove on the protest. The government had a perfect opportunity the day the 4 chaps went from Galway to let them into the talks. Have this conversation with him for an hour, 2 hours. If there wasn't something sorted, well, fine. But they were totally rejected and stuck their 2 fingers, like Michael did one night above and all, 2 fingers up to the people of Ireland, the legitimate protesters.
Yeah. Look, we'll talk about it again, Martin. I'm running out of time here. Yeah. But look, I think it's the phrase of the day. The fuel crisis hasn't gone away yet. We will be talking again. Okay, look, I better go and get ready for
Michael
news.
Lowry to withdraw his accusations of Sinn Féin behind them attacks on his staff and other staff.
Yeah, we'll put that to Michael. Okay, Martin, thanks for coming on.
Done.
Thank you very much. Okay, folks, thank you very much for listening today. I'll be back on Tipp Today for you tomorrow. Thanks to our listeners. Thanks to all our guests, including Martin Brown there and Michael Lowry. And thanks to Leanne for producing. And we are going to be going to news very shortly.
Tipp FM's Tipp Today.
With Slattery's Garage, Puck On. Main Peugeot dealers in the Premier County. And now stocking the full range of the luxury French car brand DS Automobiles. Book your test drive today with Slattery's Garage, Puck On. See slatterysgarage.ie.
Tipp FM's Tipp Today.
With Slattery's Garage, Puck On. Now is the time to pick up your next van. From the award-winning Peugeot Partner van to the expert and the load-lugging Boxer van. We have big vans, high-roof vans, long-wheelbase vans. You'll find them all at Slattery's Garage, Puck On. See slatterysgarage.ie. The Tipperary Community Diary. Sponsored by Pro Solar. Trusted solar solutions for Tipperary farms, homes and businesses. Solar made simple.
Hi, it's Carol with your Tipperary Diary. Nina Activity Club, Alzheimer's Support Group, every Wednesday 10:30am till 12:30pm at Nina GAA Club. Clonmel Community Choir, fundraising song, music and bingo event. Friday, April 24th, 7:30pm at Mulcahy's Bar, Clonmel. Tom Barry Memorial Cllr Tractor Run, Sunday 26th of April. Registration from 11:30, depart 1pm, Cllr Community Field, in aid of Care Cancer Support Centre, Clonmel. Michael English in concert, Bank Holiday Monday, 4th of May, in the Church of St Mary of the Rosary, Nina, for Sarcoma Cancer Ireland and Pieta. Tickets from the parish office.
How we use electricity can be smarter, cleaner and greener. At Electric Ireland, we can help guide you there. Our Net Zero Hub has all you need to know about smart meter plans, home EV chargers, solar panels, heat pumps, and much more. Making your usage clearer, your trips greener, your home cosier, and your world brighter. Find our Net Zero Hub at electricireland.ie.
Clonmel, get ready. Shows this year. Fresh fashion and great value right on your doorstep. Find us at the showgrounds. Welcome to something special.
At the Irish Independent, we don't just cover national news. We stand on the pitches and main streets to share the stories that shape our communities. Now, at independent.ie/local, you can choose your county and get the stories written all over Ireland. Irish Independent.
At SuperValue, we've cut prices on hundreds of products, and now we've hundreds price matching Aldi. Like SuperValue Irish chicken fillets 500 gram, $5.89. SuperValue spinach 200 gram, $1.39. Follow the green tick in store or online for hundreds more. SuperValue, still super, now better value. See price checks at supervalue.ie. Prices based on items purchased April 9th, 2026.
Join the conversation in Tipperary. Contact us through Facebook, Twitter, or email tiptoday@tipfm.com.
Now, welcome back to Tip Today, and I said we were going to go lighter a little bit for a little while at least, and we're actually going to be talking about spring, which should brighten our day a little bit with Karen Prendergast to talk about interiors. Good morning, Karen. How are you?
Good morning, Donal, and all the listeners. Really good, actually, this morning. It's nice and bright here, so hopefully the weather's changing and we're going to see a little bit of good weather.
I was up a little earlier than usual this morning, Karen, so I saw a little pink in the sky. I hope it's not a sign of storms. But it was a beautiful morning with the sun trying to break through the clouds. Yes. Are we getting that spring feeling then?
Well, you are for me this morning for sure. So this morning I'm talking about, spring into style in your home. So today I'm going to give some practical tips that can even be done over a weekend or a couple of days if a person felt that they wanted a spring clean. So I suppose the first thing I always talk about, and it comes up a lot on the show, is I suggest always decluttering. So I suppose before you shop and go out buying more, you should declutter. And the message I have this morning maybe is a 3-room reset. So that could be your living room, bedroom and kitchen, and do them all in the one hit. So what I'm suggesting is to clear every surface, remove everything that's there, and only return what you love or what you need. If there's stuff that you're putting your hand on and you haven't used it or moved it in a year or two, it needs to go. So a floor sweep is great too.
Even for kind of stuff that may have a bit of sentimental value.
Yeah, I suppose it depends. It depends.
You kind of like it, but you kind of wouldn't miss it maybe if it wasn't there.
Yeah, it depends, because for instance, we'll just say if I was going in to do a couple of rooms for someone or a revamp, some people, there's no clutter. They don't, I'm not saying hoard, but they don't have a lot. Other people, they have wedding presents or presents from years ago, Ainsley, Waterford Crystal, that kind of thing, and they have sentimental value. They might have won it on the golf course, or they might have got a present of it, and they really unsure that they want it anymore, but they don't want to get rid of it and they don't know what to do with it. So I think, if you are fed up with bits and pieces hanging around and they don't have great sentimental value, it's time to get rid of them. And I'd suggest doing a bin bag walk, and that sounds a bit radical, but broken, unused plants that are maybe sitting around that are half dead, get rid of them or donate them.
And is there a guilt-free way of getting rid of the stuff that you're kind of iffy about?
I think if stuff is in good condition and you're not using it, the charity shops are calling out for items. And what I always do if I'm getting rid of some bits that I have in the house, or clothes, shoes, different bits and pieces, I'll ask my sisters first, are they interested in them? I'll ask some of my friends, are they interested in them? And if they're not, then they'll go to the charity shop and so forth. So depending on what it is that you want to get rid of. But honestly, decluttering for so many people is so difficult. to even get their head around starting at Donal in the first place, you know, but it does make a huge difference.
I think I'd be a bit of a hoarder by inclination, that I hate throwing things out, that there might be a use for them. You know, I'm one of those people, and I used to work in IT, so I have boxes of cables and old bits of equipment that might be useful someday, but actually there's nothing there that will ever be used again.
So there is a lot to be gained for it. And you know, sometimes I'll say, and I'll say this straight out, sometimes you might be in the form to do that kind of a job, or you might have the headspace, and you could put it off for months and months and months, and then all of a sudden you could wake up and it could be a good day, or you have extra time in your hands, and that's the time, I'd say, to hit a little bit of a declutter.
Okay, and I mean, actually, if clutter is getting bad, a decluttering can actually completely change a room.
Honestly, I find every so often I might walk out into my utility area and say, you know, my stock of water and the whole lot needs tidy up, and I need to tidy up my pots and pans out. There's kind of a walk-in pantry and the whole lot, and it does make me feel so much better. So I used to live I live in a smaller house now than before, so decluttering, I think if you're living in an apartment or a smaller house especially, you need to keep on top of it, or otherwise just everything gets packed in.
Yeah, so that's the spring clean. That's the first part of your kind of to-do list for us today.
Yeah, so the second part then, I'm talking about light and colour. So I suppose the key message there is spring is to welcome the light back in. And I think people like their decor to support that. So swap out your heavy cushion covers, your throws, that kind of thing, and bring in some lighter colours. So what's in colours in accessories this year? They're warm white, sage green is very big, terracotta, dusty rose and soft apricot. And I've actually chosen 5 colours to call out for people, paint colours, if that's okay. So if someone's looking for a warm white for their walls, alabaster white is a lovely colour. If they're looking for a sage green, spring tide is beautiful. If they're looking for a terracotta colour, foxmount is a great light terracotta. If they're looking for a dusty rose, chestnut pink is very good. And if they're looking for a soft apricot, there's a new colour out in one of the charts. It's called Delphi, Delphi. So if anybody looks up those colours, they'll get a swatch up on their phone or their computer, and it'll bring them to those colour swatches.
And you're talking, this isn't paint, really.
This isn't paint, no. I'm talking about textiles.
Seasonally changing the cushions and maybe even the curtains, possibly.
So definitely the window dressings, you might put a lighter curtain up, such as a sheer or a linen, and brighten up the area that way. Some people do that, some people don't. Layering lighting is very good as well, to add a table lamp or a floor light rather than relying on overhead lights only, because with the longer evenings and everything, the overhead lights, the ceiling lights don't get as much use. So that's why I would be suggesting that. And also, if you're looking for light and bright, mirrors are great to place opposite a window to bring in the natural light into a darker area, and they can be easily got for under €50.
Yeah, absolutely. It improves the light and makes the space seem bigger. It's just a little head trick that works, the mirrors.
It does. And again, why I called out those colours for the walls was, if anybody is thinking of changing, they're great support colours there if they're looking to go with the tones that are in this spring.
Yeah, and I'm interested in the lighting thing, because I'm not a big fan of the overhead, middle of the ceiling lights anyway. I find, you tend to put up something nice and bright, like the old 100-watt bulbs there, and I actually hate that bright light. So is there any kind of science or theories you should apply if you're putting out lamps and stuff? Of
course there is. So you need, if you are working in an area, so if children are doing homework from home or you're working from home, then you need task lighting. So that could be a lamp on an office desk. It could be maybe in a kitchen area that you have a desk that you need task lighting. And then you have ambient lighting. So ambient lighting is the lamps that you might switch on at night time. Obviously they're your bedside lamps as well, because you don't want your ceiling light on. You need a lamp beside you, on the bedside lamps as well. So there's different types of lighting, and they'll suit different types of people. But for instance, I'll just take my kitchen. In my kitchen I have spots. I also have a pendant light over my island unit. I have lighting under my kitchen units. And also, how many lamps have I in that area? I have just 2 lamps. table lamps in that area as well. One where I sit over where I watch television behind me, and I have a nice little lamp, a round circular glass lamp in the corner. People will be interested in this, in the corner of my kitchen units. So when I go to bed at night or whatever, I'm coming back out, I've just got that nice light on all night, and an energy saving bulb, and it means a lot.
Oh yeah.
So I have 4 or 5 different types of lighting just in my kitchen, come down and living alone.
Yeah, and did you find that you use them all at once? Or
no, never. The spots are used very little.
Yeah.
The ones over the kitchen units are used a lot. The one over the island is used a lot. And then that little lamp that I'm talking about that I leave in the corner, the glass one, it's very, very small, is used every evening. But we'll say
That's just when you're not in the room, really, so that when you walk through, you're not banging on your foot off the table.
12 spots in the living area, 6 in the living area and 6 in the kitchen, and a lot of the time they're not on. So I think if you are planning a room or doing a revamp, lighting to me is the most important thing in any room, and that should come first.
Interesting, very interesting. Yeah, no, I understand what you're saying, because it definitely changes the room the way you light it.
It does, and again, it's to have the lighting that you need at any one given time, and it doesn't mean that people are worried, I'll have a big electricity bill. It's not about that at all. If you have more lighting, then it's less likely that you're going to be using more lighting that's going to cost you.
Yeah, it's options you need.
Yes, you need
Great.
options.
What else should we be looking at?
Yeah, and I suppose, let me see. So I'm going to do a quick room by room. So your living room, you can rearrange your furniture to face the light with the brighter evenings. That's a great quick tip. Bedrooms, white neutral linen, and maybe a nice print or a vase, or maybe a fake plant in a nice vase could be lovely. Your kitchen, I always suggest clearing the countertops and maybe put a nice pot with some flowers on it in the window, or a herb pot. In your hallway, I think if you haven't got a lot of storage and you need room for coats, for hanging coats or whatever, get yourself a nice hanging solution for coats, be that freestanding or something that'll go on the wall. And the bathroom, you can't beat fresh towels, maybe a nice plant, and that'll brighten your bathroom. If somebody has a vanity unit in their bathroom, they can introduce that colour from the vanity unit into some towels and freshen it up that way as well. And of course, always white fresh towels are great.
Yeah, interesting, very good.
And I suppose
you have a few budget tips
I
for people as well.
Just to finish up, for about under €50, you can definitely get new cushion covers, one plant, a pot and a candle. For €100 and €150, you can definitely get new bed linen and maybe a nice rug and maybe some kind of a print. And of course, what is free, what we've been talking about today, is declutter, rearrange, swap out accessories between rooms that you already have, and that works really well. And I suppose a tip is Facebook Marketplace is brilliant, our local one. Vinted is huge now for buying online, and of course our charity shops are amazing for cheap finds as well. So if anyone's on a budget, there's lots available to us at different price points. And I've been in and out a lot of the shops in town, and between here and Cllr in the last 2 weeks, and they are chock-a-block with stock. So in the springtime, all the shops around Easter get all their deliveries in, and they're stocked to the last. In another month, the stock will be getting less, and they won't have as much of it. So if there is anyone listening today that's thinking of doing a spring clean and changing up with curtains, cushions, vases, bed linen, there's a lot around. An awful lot around at the moment, and it tends to be seasonal. The next time we'll see as much stock in will probably be October.
Okay, great.
All right,
okay,
Donald.
Thanks a million, Karen Prendergast there. And folks, that's a little advice for you. See if you can bring a bit of spring into your home and see if it lightens your mood a bit. We're going to be right back with the news.
Tipp FM's Tipp Today.
With Slattery's Garage, puck on. It's time to change. Test drive the award-winning range of Peugeot hybrids and fully electric vehicles at Slattery's Garage today. See slatterysgarage.ie.
Tipp Today.
With Slattery's Garage, puck on. It's time to change. Test drive the award-winning range of Peugeot hybrids and fully electric vehicles at Slattery's Garage today. See slatterysgarage.ie.
Now, welcome back to Tipp Today with me, Donal, in the hot seat for a couple of days while Fran is away. We will be coming back to the political situation a little later. But first, let's lighten the mood a little bit with, well, maybe lightening it isn't the right term. I'm joined by Muriel, Cuddy, and we're going to be talking about, I suppose, the cost of living and the effects of it in our well-being slot. Muriel, are we?
We are, Donal. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
I'm great, thanks. And it's coming from what we've been listening to, like with the protests and why they're doing it and all of that kind of thing. So that's where my
everyone's feeling this at the moment.
Massively. And when I was doing this, because I did a bit of research on it in with pricing and that kind of thing, and the average family needs about €6,000 a month now. That's 72,000 annually, right? But the living wage is about 32,000. The living wage doesn't even cover basic needs. So 2/3 of households have a gross income below 60,000. A third of them are above it. So that says straight away, doesn't it, where we're at. Middle class salary now is deemed to be between 90 to 100,000. That's just crazy, isn't it? So that would deem most of us to be in the lower income bracket as it is. And where are we going? So where are we going to be in 5 or 10 years' time, the way the cost of living is going,
Yeah, I think a lot of the salary stats are skewed a bit by massive salaries in a lot of the big tech firms and stuff. So in the same way as our GDP is slightly skewed, I think for the ordinary people in rural Tipperary, that sounds wrong as well.
Totally. And say I know it. I work and get a decent wage. My husband works and gets a decent wage. But even with the 2 wages coming into our house, we can actually see by the end of the week there's nothing left. So you know it yourself. It doesn't have to be spelled out. Groceries, for a family of whatever, 4, a family of 6. We've 6 of us. Our groceries are definitely between €400 to €500 a week. That's a week's wages for most people before you do anything else, But I did a kind
of... The whole thing, and I've heard people say this as well, that the whole thing of stopping into the shop and, for a bit of milk and bread, spending 20 quid, that's gone. You're 50 or 100 quid every time you go to the shop now.
Oh, totally. And you don't even go in. I wouldn't go in anymore. So if I would have gone in before to pick up 1 or 2 things, sometimes now I'll just bypass it. I'm like, no, what's at home will do. I'm not going in spending another 20 or 30 euros because it literally isn't there. But the difference, so I did a price comparison, Donald, from your grocery bill in 2020 to the same basket today. Okay, so what's the difference, in the very basics of what we all need? So your 2 litres of milk, so they would have been 150 in 2020. They're 210 to 225 today. Your bread has gone up from 110 to 175. Eggs are gone from 240 to 350. Your butter's gone from 250 to 410. And then even on percentages, I did the rest of them because it's nearly easier to hear. So your beef tenderloin, your steak, is up 30%. 4 chicken fillets are up nearly 40%. Pasta's up 70%. Potatoes are up 40%. Apples 37%, sugar 54%, tea bags 37%, cereal 41%. That's crazy, isn't it?
It is, yeah. And you're making a really good point there, Muriel. We're hearing that food inflation is at about 6.5%, and if inflation in general is hitting around 4%, what we're actually seeing when we go to get our dinner in the evening, you're talking about beef and stuff, almost 50% up in a lot of cases for some of those things that we notice the price of.
Yeah, and then you're not going to buy it then, are you? You're going to go for the cheaper, But one of the things when I was looking at it, and I suppose this is a big deal in relation to what I do every day. So, when you're talking about processed food and people say it's cheaper than your good food, it's much harder to eat well. That's actually a nonsense. Processed foods prices...
I was going to say that, Muriel. That never sat right with me. Surely it is cheaper to get your carrots, get your potatoes, or pasta or rice or whatever it is, and make yourself... you can do a lot with the cheaper cuts of meat, make yourself a stew. I don't understand how people say it's cheaper to eat processed food.
No, your fresh meat and Aldi or Lidl are cheaper than ready meals. Processed foods prices rose faster than fruit and veg last year, and that's because of the packaging and the transport. The only advantage I would see to processed food being cheaper is in terms of time and energy to cook it. That you might stick something into the microwave, that you might get 2 minutes or whatever. But most dinners, and I cooked a dinner last night, it took 20 minutes. Between the air fryer, etc. now, it doesn't have to take a huge amount of time. But if you buy a bag of potatoes, say if you buy 2.5 kg potatoes, in Aldi or Lidl or any of these places, right? They're about $3.95 for the same amount of chips. So not say your 1 kg bag, for the same amount of chips, it's actually the same price. but you have so much more nutrition in that bag of potatoes with none of the saturated fats, etc. So if you were to buy, say, like a whole chicken, your whole chicken, say, by per kg is about $3.50. Your chicken nuggets are €7 per kg. Your rice, like, is $1.20 per kg for, you know, your proper rice, buy the big bag of rice. The microwavable rice is €5 per kg. So, you know, like, there is no comparison. Fresh veg, carrots and stuff, I checked. Like, carrots are probably $1.10 per kg, but your prep veg, which people go for now, you know, the prep veg that's cut and everything for you, that's $4.50. So, like, yeah, we need to take stock. And I think while we're going through what we're going through now, Donal, we need to go backwards to come forwards. So we need to go back to, I remember Mammy used to bring home things, you know, like that. She'd look at the special offers. She'd look at the different things. She'd look at the things that were in season. She'd bulk buy because there was 5 of us. So she was able to buy the stuff that was at its cheapest. Say like apples and root veg, very cheap in winter, buy in season. Do you know what I mean? Like when the strawberries come on, buy your strawberries as your berries, that kind of thing. And in Aldi they do Super 6 and Super 7, their weekly offers on their fruit and veg. And some of them are down to like 49 cent or 79 cent. You know, so like private brands like are 90% cheaper in some of the supermarkets if you're not paying for the premium. So I think we need to go backwards and actually go back to the basics of buying the food, cooking the food, just taking our time. And, you know, you're better off, aren't you? Because you're so stressed over, have you any money? If you can save any money and put the extra time in to just stand at the worktop for an extra 10 or 15 minutes instead of scrolling on the phone or something, it's definitely more beneficial, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And sure, cooking, most people when they take a bit of stress out of it, and if you have the time to get started, you'll probably enjoy the process and enjoy the food more.
Totally. And the other thing is, you know, when you're going to a supermarket, it's something we don't do. We race in, get the shopping out of the way. That's another job done. Don't look at it like a job. So if you could do one good shop, say, just do one for the next month that you're going to say, right, I'm going to take an hour and a half. I'm going to go and I'm going to shop properly. I'm going to make a list of what I want. So straight away, you save up to 20% less when you make a list, right? You're not hungry. Your head is good. So there's no like of that piece of, you know, feeling over the top or whatever. And even if you go to the shop, so if you went at 7 o'clock in the evening, so say Thursday evening tonight, there's yellow stickers on so many things that are even heavily discounted that will actually work for you for the weekend. And even if you buy in bulk, so lots of the stuff is up to 60% cheaper if you buy in bulk. So like cereals, you know, your pasta, your cleaning stuff, definitely the own brand stuff. So if you make a list of what you need and you know what you need, and then you take your time to go around the shop, you'll have a very good chance. I would guarantee you'll probably save between anything from 50, 70, 80 euro. And that's in one shop in 1 week.
Yeah, the only problem with the bulk buying is we're all told we need to watch out for the food waste these days. So you need to have a plan that you need this and what you're going to do with it, don't you?
Well, unless it's like pasta or cereals or potatoes or whatever. Do you know what I mean? Like your potatoes are going to last. You'll get your 10 days, if not 14, if you store them properly. Pasta's never going to go off. Your cereals are good to go as well, you know, for 6 or 7 months. Cleaning products are good to go. Your toiletries, your kitchen roll, you know, your toilet paper. Like, there are things like in our house that I would buy every week. And I probably spend too much on them, buying them every week. So if I actually did take my time and say, right, okay, what do I need? What will I buy for the next month? And did one good shop on that stuff. And then every week I'm just buying the basics of what is perishable. I would definitely be better off.
Yeah, and is it only the supermarkets or should we be going to local markets? Because there would be a perception that you're paying over the odds for some of the produce there.
You see, the normal farmers markets, etc., are marvellous because the food you're going to get is literally you're eating your medicine. Does that make sense? Like we'll go to the chemist and we'll spend, 50 or 60, maybe €100 sometimes on medication. We never think of our food like that. If you're going to a farmer's market and you're getting proper food that is homegrown with no pesticides or anything on it, your eggs that are proper eggs with proper omega-3s, etc., you're fueling your body with medicine and not poison. So chances of you becoming sick or your immune system being good and high is really great. You know, so for me all day long, if on a Saturday morning there's a farmer's market beside you, you should definitely go. Like, you know, where you can go in any of the Mediterranean countries and they've all the fruits and all the veg, and like even in Dublin on Moore Street, and you see the tomatoes and everything is shining and everything looks lovely. You're even inclined to put your hand out and take it, aren't you?
Yeah.
You know, we don't get the opportunity to do that in a lot of places, but if we did, that's definitely what we should be doing.
Yeah, the fresher the better from that point of view.
Yeah.
If it's still got dirt on it, it's probably good for you.
The dirt is the minerals. That's like remember when we were little, under the nails, you used to actually eat something with the dirt. Yeah, that's why everybody's sick at the minute, because we have none of that anymore.
Very good.
Yeah.
Very good. Okay. Any other quick tips or how we improve?
So
it seems basic that if we cook ourselves and eat better food, it's going to improve our well-being. What else can we do quickly and easily?
Well, I suppose I did a food comparison in the different places as well. Am I allowed to talk about the different supermarkets, as in, own brands and stuff like that, of where came out the cheapest and where came out the most expensive?
We don't want to be advertising for people, really.
Yeah.
But look, there are bargains to be had if you shop around. And I find myself, I do it, Muriel, that there's certain things I'll go to if I want something that I should go to a particular shop, and I know it'll be nice and cheap there. But for other things, I'll go somewhere else some other day.
That's right.
And I spread it around, and you'll pick up your bargains that way, and you'll still get the products that you like, you know.
That makes sense. But the biggest thing to do, Donald, is bring a lunch, have your breakfast before you leave. How many people actually leave in the morning and actually stop and buy a coffee? And coffee's their first, whatever intake of the day, and they're spending €4 or €5 on it. Have your Weetabix or your porridge before you leave home, or a couple of boiled eggs or something, and even bring your coffee with you. Bring your food with you. Buy yourself a big bag of mixed nuts, have them in the car, have them at work. Buy yourself whatever fruit it is. Bring your lunches in a lunchbox. Have prepped if it's leftover dinner from the night before, or else make a sandwich. Proper sandwich with your brown bread and your chicken or your tuna or whatever is in it. Bring your apple or your orange, bag of popcorn, whatever it is you need. Have it all inside in your lunchbox. Something in the car again on the way home, and you fueled yourself properly, probably for less than a tenner for the day. And if you have a proper, as I would say, mammy dinner when you come home in the evening time, there's your meals. And if you've even just done it for the 4.5 days, and by Friday lunchtime you fancy going downtown for whatever it is, or Saturday you want to go out for your lunch, you've saved the money then, haven't you, by bringing what you need every day, and you've eaten very well.
I'm feeling like a very good boy, Muriel. I had my porridge this morning and I have an apple in the laptop bag, so I'm feeling great.
That's why you're on fire today, Johnny.
We better leave it there, Muriel.
Yep.
Thanks a million for all those tips and advice, and Muriel will be back again next week. Thanks very much, Muriel Cuddy. We'll be back again after this. Back to politics, I'm afraid, folks. If you're getting sick of it, it's not going away.
Tip FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage, puck on. It's time to change. Test drive the award-winning range of Peugeot hybrids and fully electric vehicles at Slattery's Garage today. See slatterysgarage.ie.